Tonight, we walk beneath ancient skies and along roads shaped not by kings or armies, but by pilgrims who carried faith in tired feet and hope in quiet hearts. Across mountains and valleys, across river crossings and forest paths, countless souls once moved westward, following sunrise and memory toward a distant cathedral where a single name was whispered like a promise: Santiago. Long before the world held borders and rails and roaring engines, these roads stretched like threads of devotion, binding villages, kingdoms, and hearts into one sacred path. Peasants, monks, merchants, nobles, all walked the same earth, drank from the same wells, prayed beneath the same stars, believing each mile softened the soul and brought them closer to grace. Tonight we follow them, not in haste, not in struggle, but in stillness. To feel the hush of dawn on the French plains, to hear wind through Pyrenean passes, to smell incense rising in old stone chapels, and to finally stand where generations knelt, breathing dust and divinity in equal measure. Before we begin, tell me, what do you usually do to help yourself fall sleepy and drift into rest? Put your answer below. I would love to read it. And if these calm journeys bring peace to your evenings, feel free to subscribe so we may continue wandering through these ancient stories together. Long before boots pressed dust into the winding earth of Western Europe, before scallop shells hung from cloaks and staffs clicked like prayer beads against stone, there was a quiet and distant spark, a story whispered through time, carried by faith like an ember held in careful hands. It began not on a road, but on a shore far across the sea, where a fisherman once left his nets at the call of a voice gentle as dawn and vast as the sky. His name was James, son of Zebedee, brother of John, friend to a teacher who walked upon waves and spoke in parables older than stars. He had not walked toward glory in his life, nor sought a crown of gold, but instead carried word of peace through dusty towns and olive groves. When his time came, he met his fate not with sword in hand, but with faith in heart, and so his bones, it is said, journeyed farther west than any legion ever marched. Across waters restless with foam and wind, until they rested in the green hush of Galicia, where ocean breathes against rugged cliffs and gulls circle like guardians of forgotten truth. There, in land where hills roll like sleeping giants and rivers coil through forests ancient as memory, the story settled like seed in fertile soil. Centuries passed before that seed stirred. Fields ripened, kingdoms rose and fell, storms swept churches and villages, yet somewhere beneath moss and earth, a legend waited, quiet as prayer before dawn. And when it sprouted, it grew not as rumor but as revelation, that the apostle rested in this far corner of the world, at land's last breath where Europe leaned into ocean's endless whisper. People came in wonder, hesitant at first, as though approaching miracle requires softer steps. Shepherds climbed from valleys, monks walked bitter winds, simple folk crossed rivers swollen by winter melt, all to kneel where faith and land embraced like old friends. In time a chapel rose upon the place, humble and small, its stones warmed by candles and pressed by trembling palms. Pilgrims arrived not yet in masses, but like stars scattered across night, single souls seeking grace, each step a petition, each mile a whispered hymn. Word traveled slowly at first, along merchant roads and monastery corridors. Scribes inked stories in margins, pilgrims carried tales to distant hearths, and the song of Santiago stirred across kingdoms. Soon, villages spoke his name in quiet reverence, peasants prayed for his watch over plough and harvest, sailors called on him as they braved wild Atlantic waters. And nobles, hearts heavy with war and duty, heard the tale and felt longing for absolution beyond court and sword, a redemption earned not by decree, but by dust on feet and humility in breath. Thus, a path began to form, faint, fragile, beaten only by few determined hearts. But paths, like prayers, grow when shared. More feet pressed earth, flattening grasses, tracing tracks where morning dew glimmered and birds called from hedgerows. Monks built way stations where weary souls could rest and rise renewed. Villages offered bread, water drawn cool from wells, and blessing in exchange for nothing but gratitude. The roads swelled like river in spring, branching across mountains and plains. It stretched from the heart of France, from stone-clad abbeys and roadside shrines. It wound through Pyrenean passes where mist shrouded peaks like angels' cloaks. It crossed fields of Castile where wind moved like song across wheat, and it led always westward. As though every traveler followed sunset, hoping to catch where heaven meets horizon. That road became more than distance. It became longing turned into landscape, devotion woven into earth. And still the legend grew, fed by faith, crowned by ritual. Kings set seal upon it, not to own but to honor. Monasteries mapped it in strong vellum manuscripts, marking wells, bridges, saintly chapels. Shepherds learned to bless those who passed their flocks, and innkeepers placed straw for pilgrims beneath rafters smelling faintly of bread and wood smoke. Roads once shaped for carts bent to meet pilgrim feet. Ferrymen built small boats to cross rivers swollen by spring storm. Blacksmiths forged staffs capped with iron to meet rocky ground. Those who walked did not seek riches, they sought the unseen. Yet the unseen moved with them. Wind across crimson heather, candle flames trembling in chapel alcoves, stars gathering in constellations that guided like lanterns. Dawn always came soft, mist rising from fields like souls ascending from earth. Dusk always came gold, shadows stretching long like memories across path. They walked hungry sometimes, weary often, but filled always with quiet fire. Some carried sin heavy as iron, hoping each step lifted weight. Some carried grief, seeking healing beneath stone vaults where saints slept. Some walked out of wonder, curious what lay beyond village horizon. Some walked simply because others once had, and tradition can call louder than voice. Knights traveled armored with prayers instead of steel, monks barefoot in humility, peasants with patched cloaks and hearts full of stubborn hope. Every footfall was testament, every blister sacrament, and through it all, the land watched with ancient patience. Streams murmured secrets, oaks whispered blessings in wind, fields bowed like congregations in harvest breeze. Even mountains seemed to lean close, as though listening to countless murmurings of Ave and Credo carried across their snow-brushed flanks. The world itself felt cathedral vast, sky its vault, earth its nave, clouds moving like incense across blue vastness. Pilgrim and creation walked together, each sanctifying the other. Thus the Camino was born, not as road carved by empire, but as path shaped by longing. It did not command, it invited. It did not pave, it softened. It did not conquer, it healed. And Santiago, miracle of distant shore, became not a relic entombed, but a beacon living in footstep, breath, silence. And now, centuries later, when we trace those early miles in quiet imagination, we feel still the hush of origin, the humble chapel before grand cathedral, the first pilgrim footfall before river of souls, the whisper of saint before song of sanctuary. The road did not begin with sound, it began with stillness, with one heart believing enough to walk, with one story believed enough to follow. In that beginning, the world learned that journey could be prayer, that distance could be devotion, that westward road could carry pilgrim not only to tomb of saint, but to discovery of self, gentle, humble, and unafraid beneath endless sky. As years folded into each other like pages turning in a sacred book, the quiet path toward the resting place of St. James did not fade. It widened, deepened, breathed. What began as whispers and solitary footfalls soon echoed across the breadth of kingdoms, until the very notion of pilgrimage became river-like in its movement, gathering tributaries from distant lands. The Camino did not force its place in the world. It invited it, like a lantern shining softly in the dusk, drawing wanderers by warmth, not command. Rulers learned of it, and though thrones rose and fell like tides, devotion endured beyond them. Kings blessed the route not for conquest, but to protect souls who walked in innocence. Charters were written, wax seals impressed upon parchment, promising safe passage across forests where wolves prowled and through valleys where bandits once lurked in brush like shadowed hunger. Way stations received immunity from tax. Bridges rose across rivers once crossed by trembling ford. Monasteries opened stone halls to give tired bodies straw and soup when frost-laced fields. For pilgrimage held power no crown could command, a power born not of sword, but of humility. Even proud knights dismounted on this road, laying aside titles like cloaks left at chapel door. For here, every traveler was equal. Here, every step was weighed not by wealth, but by endurance and longing. Princes walked beside peasants, nobles beside beggars, monks beside merchants whose fingers once counted coins, but now traced rosary beads worn smooth by whispered hope. The Camino softened hearts the way water shapes stone, slowly, patiently, with purpose beyond sight. At crossroads and river bends, shrines blossomed like flowers rooted in faith. Sometimes nothing more than wooden cross leaning beneath oak branches, sometimes a stone arch where candles flickered behind weathered glass, sometimes a humble church built by hands who had walked before, wanting to ease the miles of those who would walk after. Bells rang from small towers in valleys, calling pilgrims to rest and prayer. Wind moved through poplar leaves in sighs that sounded like blessings whispered by unseen guardians. Then one night, as legend holds, the heavens themselves confirmed the road. Darkness lay deep across the land, stars glimmering faint like scattered embers in cooling hearth. And suddenly above the western sky, a river of light appeared, brilliant arc tracing across night like divine brushstroke. It shimmered like silver dust spilled from angel's hand, a pathway of stars stretching toward land's edge, pointing, guiding, calling. The faithful saw and believed. That celestial river, later called the Way of Stars, the Milky Way, marked the pilgrim route upon heaven as their feet traced it upon earth. Thus the Camino found its twin, a road of earth beneath and a road of stars above. And pilgrim eyes lifted often from dust to sky, seeing not just destination, but destiny. They knew then, as they know now. The journey was not only across land, but through soul, guided by constellations that watched as shepherd in field, merchant by fire, monk in cloister, all turned westward in silent vow. The early church of Santiago grew, first modest, then stronger as voices and footsteps multiplied. Stone replaced timber, candles multiplied like prayers made visible. Pilgrims knelt and rose again, touching floor that wore smooth beneath thousands of palms pressing in gratitude, repentance, hope. And when word of miracles spread, of healing found, of sorrow eased, of forgiveness embraced, roads filled further. Caravans moved not with goods but with yearning, inns filled not with traders but seekers, yet pilgrimage was not made only of grace. Roads wore down boots, hunger gnawed, storms lashed open fields, and mountains tested limbs unaccustomed to climb. Some fell ill, some faltered, some returned home with dust still clinging to cloak, hearts fuller yet journey incomplete. But even they did not fail, for the Camino teaches not only endurance, but surrender. Surrender to pace slower than ambition, to horizon farther than horizon before it, to truth that even steps unfinished carry blessing. And though faith built path, faith did not walk alone. Curiosity stirred in restless minds who longed to see lands beyond village walls. Penitence walked beside them, heavy but humbled. Gratitude marched too, hearts seeking to give thanks for harvest spared or illness lifted. Some walked barefoot in devotion deeper than fear of thorn. Some carried staff carved with holy symbols, wood smooth from years of grip. Burdens dropped with each mile, grief eased, pride softened, heart made light like dawn fog rising from meadow. In time, the shrine grew grand, shaped not by vanity but by awe. Carvings crept along archways like vines, towers stretched toward sky as if answering celestial road above. Incense curled along nave like fragrant prayer. But grandeur did not diminish humility, it amplified it. To enter was to shrink, not from fear but from wonder, as if body remembered suddenly its smallness and soul remembered its vastness. Pilgrims wept often here, not from sorrow but from recognition that they had arrived not at end of world but at threshold of themselves. Outside cathedral walls, markets bustled and languages mingled, yet inside silence ruled, gentle as night snowfall. A pilgrim would kneel, forehead to cool stone, and feel centuries beneath fingertips, the weight of thousands who came before, each leaving faint trace like breath on glass. In that stillness, one understood. The road did not end here. It simply turned inward, deeper, quieter. For the legend of St. James was never merely history. It became mirror, reflecting each traveler's longing back to them softened by mercy. What began as rumor of relic grew into river of humanity crossing mountains and centuries alike, fed by hunger older than memory, hunger not for treasure, but for grace that no empire could mint. And so the Camino entered the world as threads stitched through tapestry of Europe, binding lives together in pilgrimage that walked edge between earth and heaven, dust and light, sin and forgiveness. Its origin was not flame, but ember, quiet, persistent, burning without consuming. And from that ember, thousands of lanterns lit, one footstep at a time, until continent glowed with path walked in love and ache and hope. Even now, when we close eyes and follow those early pilgrims in imagination, we hear staff tapping ground, cloaks stirring in breeze, psalm whispered under breath, water trickling in roadside fountain, distant church bell calling to evening rest. We feel weight of sky above and earth beneath, guiding, holding, blessing. And in our hearts, road stirs, ancient, patient, waiting. For the Camino does not ask hurried soul to conquer distance. It asks only to walk, gently, honestly, toward horizon where faith meets humility, where footsteps carry prayer, where destination is not simply place, but peace. And just as first pilgrims once did, we pause at beginning, looking west, quiet breath forming into hope. For journey sacred does not start with step, it starts with willingness to take it. And that willingness, tender as flicker of candle in morning dim, is already enough. The road to Santiago was never one road, and never one story. It was a weave of paths stretching like river veins through the body of Europe, drawing life from villages and forests, monasteries and marketplaces, mountains and sea winds. Long before maps traced these ways in careful ink, the land itself held them. Worn trods through pasture, shepherd trails across mountains, ancient Roman roads polished smooth by hooves and wheels. When pilgrims began to walk, they did not create these paths. They revealed them, like streams appearing when frost melts in early spring. At dawn, the world softened, dew trembling on grass, and the first pilgrims stepped into quiet, their cloaks hugging shoulders as chill lingered in the air. Whether they began north beside the grey breath of the Atlantic, east beneath cathedrals crowned with spires, or south where olive trees shimmered in morning gold, every traveller knew one truth. Westward lay the shrine, where land kissed ocean and earth held memory of a saint. The French plains saw countless footsteps first. From the gates of Paris, where scholars once murmured scripture under budding chestnut trees, a road wound through gentle fields, past monasteries whose bells rang like heartbeat of God across countryside. The way stretched to Tours, where pilgrims knelt before relics of St. Martin, seeking strength for miles ahead. It passed through Poitiers, beside vineyards that glowed purple in autumn, and southward toward the great passes of the Pyrenees. Mountains rising like ancient guardians between kingdoms, stern and solemn beneath clouds that clung to their flanks like wool. To cross the Pyrenees was to taste both fear and exaltation. Paths narrowed into ribbons clinging to cliff. Wind whistled like ghost choirs across stone. Snow dusted slopes even when valleys below swelled with spring green. Pilgrims leaned into staff and prayer alike, breath pulled tight, hearts humbled by sky so close it seemed to rest upon shoulders. Yet at summit, there waited a stillness sacred as chapel hush, a moment when world fell silent but for rustle of alpine grass, and road unfurled beneath them like promise renewed. From mountain descent came the warmth of Navarrean valleys, where villages clung to rivers and church towers cast long shadows across cobbled squares. There, bread baked with country flour tasted of earth and labor, and wine poured from clay jugs filled weary bones with gentle warmth. In crowded inns and monastery halls, pilgrims shared blankets and stories, tales of leaving home at first frost, of mothers' blessings whispered at cottage doors, of storms endured and strangers' kindnesses offered without price. Laughter mingled with prayer, and brotherhood formed not from blood but from blisters and hope. Another road rose from Portugal, by ocean's silver edge, where salt spray clung to cloaks and gulls followed like sentinels of sea-blown faith. Fishermen once guided pilgrims to safe coves and sheltered harbors, the nets heavy not only with fish, but with trust in tides and heavens alike. Towns along the coastal way lit lanterns in high windows to guide travelers at dusk, just as ships followed lighthouse flame when night swallowed horizon. Walking here meant hearing waves murmur ancient hymns against rock and feeling earth breathe with tide, steady as prayer beads clicking in pocket. To the north lay another path, hugging rugged coastline where cliffs broke into white surf and forests leaned toward sea as though listening for stories carried by wind. Pilgrims here moved through mist and pine-scented air, their boots softened by moss and rain-damp soil. Fisher hamlets offered dried cod and humble beds. Monasteries on lonely hills watched over travelers like shepherds over flock. In winter, storms howled, waves roared, and roads slicked with sleet. Yet even then, pilgrims pressed on, pulled not by comfort but calling. And from far south rose yet another route, born from the echo of Rome and roads Romans once carved like straight certainties across land. This way moved through dusty plains and olive groves, past Moorish towers and ancient market towns, through heat that shimmered in waves like mirage above wheat. It was long, demanding as desert fast, yet rich with history and forgiveness, for those who walked here carried weight of penance heavy as sun upon shoulders, trusting miles to cleanse like sacred fire. Though paths differed, some shaded by walnut and ash, some open to scorching light, some echoing with river song, others haunted by mountain wind, they shared rhythm. Step after step, breath after breath, mile after mile. Boots split at seams, soles thinned, cloaks frayed, but hearts strengthened. Each night, when pilgrims lay on straw mats beneath rafters where smoke curled toward moonlight, they whispered gratitude for shelter, even when simple and cold. In darkness, coughs and prayers mingled, bodies worn into silence, souls warmed by belonging not to place, but to journey. Villages along these paths changed because of them. Doors opened wider. Fields near road forged footpaths through grain. Farmers placed water jugs near crossroads. Bakers set aside loaves each morning for passing strangers who might never return, but carried blessing in tired step. Bells rang when pilgrims arrived, and again when they left, marking rhythm of comings and goings as if time itself measured by travel and farewell. In quiet moments, walking alone beneath canopy of oak or beside field where cattle grazed slow and lazy beneath sun, pilgrims found thoughts softening, settling like silt in riverbed after flood passes. Worries that once felt sharp dulled, pride cracked, sorrows eased. It is truth as old as road. Distance reshapes heart. Long miles strip away burden until only need remains, need for rest, need for mercy, need for breath, need for hope. And these needs, shared by all who walked, became prayer made footstep. Sometimes they reached a chapel overlooking valley, stone small but spirit immense. Candles flickered inside, scent of wax and evergreen branches soothing weary lungs. Some pilgrims knelt, Some simply watched dust spin in shafts of light, feeling hush descend. There was no need to speak. Silence here was language complete. Even birds hesitated at windowsill, as though reverence held even wings in stillness. Where rivers were wide, ferrymen sang as they rowed travelers across water that shimmered like polished metal in dusk. Where paths wound through pasture, shepherds raised crook in greeting, sheep bells tinkling like distant altar chimes. Woodcutters left carved crosses pressed into bark of trees, markers for those who might otherwise lose way in fog. In mornings, mist curled low, carrying sound of distant bells from monastery towers, gentle summons not to prayer alone, but to continuation. Thus the Camino grew not as a road, but as living ribbon of faith braided through lives, seasons, lands. It connected mountain to sea, chapel to cathedral, hearth to horizon. No pilgrim walked alone, even when solitary, for behind each footstep lay thousands more, and above each step burned stars that once guided shepherds and sailors and now guided seekers of grace. And through every path, the west called. The weight of miles mattered less than direction. For west meant Santiago, where earth and ocean met like pilgrim and blessing, where shrine waited not as finish, but as embrace. And so they walked, steady as dawn rising, patient as river carving valley, hearts beating in rhythm with road older than memory and wider than map could ever hold. And as twilight settled each day and lanterns flickered in tavern windows, pilgrims rested, knowing tomorrow would bring another stretch of earth, another chapel bell, another shared bowl of humble stew, another sunrise painting path gold. And when they slept, they dreamed not of end, but of continuation, for pilgrimage was not destination, but becoming. Days bled into weeks and weeks into seasons as pilgrims moved westward, not as conquerors nor wanderers, but as threads sewn into a garment of devotion stretched across Europe. Each road, though different in soil and slope, carried the same breath, humility walking beneath sky too vast to name, hearts shedding weight at pace of steady step. The land watched them pass, century after century, beneath constellations unchanged and winds that remembered every soul who bent into their whisper. Along the French way, fields rippled like cloth laid over breathing earth, wheat bending in soft bow before morning breeze. Churches rose like stones caught in moment of prayer, spires reaching skyward as if yearning to return to origin. Pilgrims paused at fountains carved by forgotten hands, where cool water spilled into basins scarred by centuries of thirst. They washed dust from fingers, splashed faces, drank deeply. The water carried taste of mountain snow melted long before pilgrims' birth. Reminder that journey was larger than single life, older than single footstep. At Bordeaux, vineyards spilled across hills, clusters heavy as rosary beads, purple and gold shining under late summer glow. Farmers waved from trellises, baskets heavy with harvest. Pilgrims walked past hum of presses and sweet scent of crushed grape drifting through air like memory of feast. Some paused to taste bread and cheese in shaded cloisters where monks pressed quiet blessing on each traveler. Others moved onward, letting fragrance cling to cloak like soft, lingering gift. Crossroads hummed with voices of many lands. Travelers compared routes like rivers comparing origins, some from Burgundy's fertile valleys, others from German forests where mist held secrets older than scripture. They spoke in murmurs by firelight, sharing blister salves and stories of weathered bridges, sudden storms, fleeting miracles. A stranger's tale of a chapel lit by dawn felt as nourishing as bread, and a whispered suggestion of safe inn became treasure greater than coin. These gatherings formed fellowship not by vow, but by need and grace, strangers becoming companions beneath star-pricked sky. In the Pyrenees, snow-kissed peaks even in spring, white lace draped across stone shoulders. Paths turned steep, then steeper, carved into mountain bones by hooves, wheels, and centuries of courage. Rocks shifted beneath boots, ere thinned breath misted in crisp breeze. The climb was not only ascent of earth, It was a scent of spirit, stripping pride like wind stripping leaves from oak. Clouds drifted low, veiling summit, but when they parted, worlds stretched wide, valleys deep as memory, horizons broad as forgiveness. Pilgrims stood breathless not from climb alone but from awe, feeling small and significant in same heartbeat. Downward path tested knees and patience. Pebbles rolled, rivers crossed by narrow bridges creaked beneath weight. Yet each valley held refuge, village with doorway marked by scallop shell offering hearth warmth, monastery with heavy timbers blackened by centuries of smoke, whose kitchens stirred pots of lentils as steam rose like incense, whose halls echoed with measured chant and silent kindness. Travelers slept on straw, bodies aching, souls soothed by stillness under watch of flickering lamp. Further west, plains stretched bare and immense, wind sweeping across them with strength ancient as creation. Clouds sailed endless sky like slow ships on blue sea. Here, step rhythm became meditation, ground thudding beneath boots like steady drum accompanying prayer. Dust clung to hem, sun warmed bones, horizon promised yet never hurried. Even emptiness became teacher, showing that quiet can fill heart as completely as song. On the northern coastal way, cliffs plunged to restless ocean foaming white against dark rock. Salt air coated lips, gulls wheeled above, and sea roared hymns that no human voice could match. Some evenings pilgrims watched ship lanterns flicker far offshore, tiny flames against indigo expanse, mariners walking their own uncertain pilgrimage across waves. The road here smelled of brine and pine, wind threading through cloaks with chill sharp but cleansing. Chapels perched on cliff ledges like nests built against eternity, candles burning behind thick glass where wind clawed stone. In the Portuguese south, roads wound between cork oak and olive groves, cicadas buzzing in heat that shimmered like veil drawn across sun. Orange blossoms perfumed air, earth glowed warm ochre beneath pilgrim feet. Villagers pressed olives into thick green oil and sliced bread warm from oven, sharing without expectation. Paths narrowed through vineyards, widened across open pasture, then dipped toward river crossings where fishermen guided walkers across in skiffs that rocked gently under weight of hope. Through all lands, bridges told ancient stories. Some arched in graceful spans of dressed stone, built by masons long returned to earth. Others were planks bound by rope, creaking with each step yet faithful. Crossing water always carried meaning, river as boundary between past and future, crossing as quiet baptism of will. Pilgrims paused mid-bridge to watch ripples drift beneath, as though seeing their worries carried away by currents moving toward unseen sea. And roads wound into forests deep and cool, where sunlight fell in gold shafts between trunks, and silence wrapped pilgrims like cloak. Here birdsong carried secrets, and moss cushioned weary steps. Travelers lowered voices, feeling chapel presence in branches arching overhead, like ribs of natural cathedral. On such paths, men and women found themselves speaking softly to God without realizing prayer had formed upon lips, as though air itself wished to lift their hearts toward unseen grace. At night, stars gathered thick overhead, constellations bright as candles in vast dark. Pilgrims lay on hard pallets or cloister floors and gazed upward through half-open shutters. There, above all roads and kingdoms, stretched the same celestial path believed to mirror the one beneath, the Milky Way sweeping west like river of souls flowing toward Compostela. Some traced it with finger in air, others fell asleep mid-whisper, hearts eased by thought that heaven mapped journey as faithfully as earth. The Camino was not one thing. It was many roads, many voices, many prayers braided into one long sigh of longing and arrival. Some days brought laughter shared with fellow travelers over bowl of stew. Others brought tears shed alone beside roadside cross. Some steps felt light, others heavy with memory. But always the road continued, neither judging nor comforting, simply offering itself like open palm beneath tired hand. Along way, miracles did not roar, they whispered. A stranger sharing last loaf, a storm parting before mountain ford, a thorn that did not pierce, a kindness found in poorest cottage. Pilgrims learn to see grace in small things, in warmth of morning sun thawing chilled fingers, in distant bell marking evening rest, in fresh spring hidden behind bend, in simple greeting exchanged with shepherd whose flock rippled like cloud down hillside. By the time weary feet neared western hills, pilgrims had changed though they seldom felt when. Pride sloughed like skin, fears softened like wax near flame. Step became prayer, breath became offering, silence became companion steady as staff. Clouds gathered sometimes, shadowing land, but even shadow felt holy. Reminder that faith was not sky always clear, but trust through passing gloom. No path finished abruptly. They all flowed into one final stretch, converging like streams into river, like voices into hymn. Boots thudded stone streets of towns where language changed yet welcome remained. Flags fluttered, church bells tolled, and roads narrowed into lanes that led ever inward, toward heart of Santiago. Travelers who once walked alone now walked among many, their quiet steps joining others in soft, tired chorus. And though fatigue weighed heavy, hope lifted. For ahead stood cathedral towers, not yet visible but felt like heartbeat beneath earth, yet arrival waited still. Before it came, pilgrims knew last miles, walked with reverence sharpened by nearness. Some paused at hilltops to see first gleam of shrine in distance, tears rising silent as mist. Some touched scallop shells hanging from cloaks, remembering promise made at journey's dawn. Some walked slower, savoring final stretch as though reluctant to end path that had become mirror and teacher. The roads did not end when cathedral came into sight. They simply faded into its shadow like waves surrendering into shore. But before we reach that stone embrace, we pause here, at threshold where land has given all it could, where sky rests low and tender above pilgrim heads, where one more breath is taken before final steps. The roads have carried them. The earth has held them. The stars have guided them. Their hearts have changed, and still ahead waits the city of St. James, quiet beneath ancient bells, ready to receive souls shaped by distance and devotion. Soon they will stand beneath its spires. But for now they rest in final piece of journey nearly complete, as dusk settles soft upon last stretch of sacred ground. Every pilgrimage begins not with a step, but with a stirring. A quiet ache beneath the ribs, a whisper in the marrow, a longing too deep for speech. Before feet touched earth, before cloaks were fastened and scallop shells tied to cord, pilgrims felt this hush inside them, like dawn gathering in still darkness before the sun lifts its first golden breath above horizon. It was not always joy that called them, nor always sorrow. Often it was something gentler, more mysterious, an instinct that the road might teach what life had not. Some sought forgiveness. Their hearts carried the heavy bruise of regret, and each mile felt like a prayer made flesh. They left homes where guilt clung to rafters like smoke. They walked through fields that once reminded them of harm done or trust broken. And with each step, they loosened sorrow's grip, hoping distance could soften memory, that miles could cleanse what words could not. They walked not to escape, but to transform, to give their burden to the land and receive in return the quiet absolution of wind and sky. Others walked for healing. Their bodies or spirits wounded, they traveled believing that somewhere between sunrise and sunset along the pilgrim roads, grace might descend. A mother grieving child, carrying tiny knitted shoe in pouch, a soldier haunted by echoes of iron and blood, a widow with veil pressed to chest as though holding last breath of beloved. All found sanctuary not at end, but in steady rhythm of steps. Pain did not vanish, it changed, settling gently instead of burning. In evenings they sat beneath elm or in dim chapel corners, fingers brushing wood worn smooth by centuries of tears, and felt sorrow breathe easier, like winter loosening into spring. There were those who walked for devotion alone. Faith lit their path as surely as sunrise gilded hills. They rose before cockcrow whispered psalms while fastening sandals, and moved westward with eyes shining not from exhaustion but adoration. Each chapel a gift, each relic a reminder, each church bell a call deeper inward. Their journey was not escape from world but offering to it, a life lived in pilgrimage, not pilgrimage lived in life. They believed that God dwelled in dust as much as in altar, and found him in every mile. Another walked for oath, vow given in moment of fear or gratitude. A man spared from fever promised journey in return for breath restored. A mother whispered pledge when storm threatened child at sea. A merchant swore pilgrimage if wife recovered from childbirth's peril. These travelers walked not from desire, but from duty born of grace received. Yet duty grew into something gentler as miles passed. Vow no longer wait, but blessing. Each step fulfillment, each night rest earned by faith kept. Some came from curiosity, souls who felt world beyond village gate call like gull cries beyond harbor. They wished to see mountains whose peaks pierced clouds, rivers whose waters mirrored sky, towns where language sounded like song from distant land. Their journey was hunger not for bread, but for wonder. They stopped to watch craftsmen hammer iron into sparklit bloom. They lingered in markets rich with saffron scent and wool dyed crimson. They paused to trace carvings on chapel doors where angels leaned over mortals with eyes full of ancient tenderness. God found them through marvel, and they worshipped through attention. There were penitents in chains, nobles whose pride had crumbled like dry clay, thieves seeking redemption whispered like fragile hope. Barefoot, heads bowed, they moved slow as winter shadow. Villagers watched them pass with eyes of pity or awe, some making sign of cross, others offering crust of bread. For they embodied humility in its deepest form, not sorrow for what was lost, but willingness to be remade. And yet others walked because life felt small and tight around them. Fields they tilled each season yielded same harvest. Village lanes held same voices. Horizon never changed. They longed not to escape home, but to rediscover it, to walk far so that return might reveal beauty they had forgotten in familiarity. Pilgrimage was renewal of sight, seeing world beyond and thus learning to see world within. Children walked too, holding parents' hands, eyes wide as skylarks. They delighted in each stream crossed, each chapel bell heard, each loaf shared. Childhood made pilgrimage lighter, yet deeper, small bodies learning early that world is wide, sacred, and held together by kindness offered without price. Some carried simple wooden crosses, others tiny purses tied with twine containing single coin. Their laughter echoed like birdsong, soft and bright against solemn tread of older feet. Priests traveled as shepherds of hearts, not to enforce doctrine, but to accompany souls through wilderness of longing. Monks walked barefoot, beads clicking softly like raindrops. Knights sometimes joined road in plain cloak, sword left behind, for pilgrimage stripped titles like rain strips dust from leaf. Even kings, in secret or in humility known, once followed this path, attendants trailing behind with simple packs. Monarchs knowing throne means little where earth and sky are equal rulers. At crossroads, motives mingled like streams converging. Around evening fire, no one asked why another walked. Each new purpose was sacred, even when hidden in silence. Some held truth close like candle protected from wind. Others spoke freely, confessing hopes and fears into shared dusk. In that mingling, pilgrims discovered something profound. Though their reasons differed, their need was the same, to move toward something greater than themselves. No pilgrim passed untouched by compassion. A stranger lifted fallen walker from mud. An innkeeper offered extra blanket to shivering youth. A monk poured wine into shaking hands after storm chilled bone. The road taught that weakness was not shame, but invitation to receive mercy and to offer it. At times temptation whispered, to turn back, to rest too long, to abandon path for comfort of hearth and known days. But pilgrims walked on, not because they never doubted, but because doubt became part of prayer and prayer part of breath. Their staff struck dirt like heartbeat. Their sandals pressed earth like soft insistence. Their souls leaned westward like grain toward sun. And in quiet moments, alone beneath sky bruised purple by twilight, they felt presence near. Not always joy, sometimes ache, sometimes peace so tender it pierced. Pilgrimage stripped away noise until soul stood bare, trembling, luminous. They learned that purpose did not always roar. Sometimes it whispered like wind through poplar leaves, steadfast and calm. And so they walked, carrying wounds and hopes, sins and blessings, grief and wonder. They walked through frost and heat, through hunger and full table, through solitude and company, through doubt and awe. With each step, they became more human and more holy, as though dust beneath feet rose to join them in prayer. Every pilgrim belonged to road long before they arrived. And road, ancient and patient, accepted every footfall broken, eager, fearful, grateful, without judgment, only with welcome. For purpose of pilgrimage was never merely arrival. It was surrender to journey, to mystery, to transformation slow as dawn unveiling hilltop. In that surrender, pilgrims found themselves, not the selves shaped by village or past or sorrow, but selves soft, humble, luminous as candle flame flickering before sacred relic. And the road continued, as all sacred roads do, carrying them gently forward, each step a vow renewed without words. As miles deepened behind them, pilgrims changed in ways subtle yet profound. They walked not only through fields and chapels, but through themselves, peeling away layers like garments shed in growing warmth. At beginning, many carried weight like stone in satchel, weight of regret, of expectation, of fear disguised as pride. But road teaches through patience. It smooths roughness the way river smooths pebble, not by force, but by constancy. In early days, minds buzzed with home's echoes, voices of family, clatter of daily labor, worries of coin and crop. Steps felt foreign then, muscles stiff, thoughts restless as sparrows startled from eaves. But distance is its own liturgy. Repetition becomes devotion. Soon rhythm settled into bones. Breath steadied. Thoughts quieted. The world narrowed to earth beneath foot, sky above head, horizon patiently calling. Those who once counted days began instead to count blessings. A sheltered porch during rain, a cup of broth shared by stranger, the warmth of wool against dawn chill. Hunger sharpened gratitude. Fatigue sharpened humility. Pride, once firm, softened like wax before flame. They learned to bow not only before altar, but before kindness unexpected, before beauty too simple to name. A lone flower in stone wall, a child's wave from cottage window, smoke curling from hearth at twilight promising rest and warmth. In the hush of morning, dew beading on cloak hem, pilgrims discovered new companions, silence and breath. Silence, first unsettling, grew gentle, then nourishing. It wrapped itself around them like shawl, tender and weightless. In silence, truth surfaced, grief long buried, forgiveness unspoken, longing unnamed. Many wept quietly as they walked, tears falling unnoticed to dust, not in despair but release. Road absorbed sorrow like soil absorbs rain, returning it later as grass softer beneath foot. As days stretched into weeks, feet hardened, backs straightened, steps lengthened. But while body strengthened, spirit softened. Harshness melted, judgment fell away. The wealthy shared meals with the poor without thought of difference, for blisters equalized them. The educated walked beside peasants, learning wisdom not from book, but from endurance and laughter. Here, no one asked station or trade, for pilgrim's garment was humility worn by all. And yet, along road, temptations wandered like shadows. Comfort beckoned in warm towns, fear whispered in lonely forests, impatience stirred when rain fell for days, soaking wool and chilling bone. Some turned back, hearts torn by longing for home stronger than longing for shrine. But those who stayed learned resilience not as stubbornness, but as surrender. Surrender to pace slower than thought, surrender to weather, surrender to distance that refused to shrink at demand. Even saints carved in roadside niches watched pilgrims pass with gaze neither stern nor indulgent, only knowing. They had seen centuries of travelers, kings disguised in plain cloak, lovers walking side by side in silent promise, widows clutching rosary, knights limping from wounds unseen, scholars reciting psalms beneath breath, thieves seeking mortal and divine pardon. Stone eyes had watched victories of spirit and failures too, and knew both belonged to pilgrimage on stormy days, sky darkened like iron. Wind pressed cloaks to bodies, rain hammered ground until mud swallowed steps. Pilgrims leaned on staffs, heads bowed, breaths loud against roar of heavens. Yet even then, something sacred surged, sense that struggle sanctified, that every drop of rain was baptism repeated, each gust test refining soul like gold in flame. When storm passed, air smelled clean as new promise, and weary pilgrims lifted faces to rainbow arching like quiet benediction above fields glistening with light. In towns, they walked under gates carved with saints and angels worn smooth by centuries of devotion. Inns offered straw beds and bowls of lentils steaming fragrant with herbs. Warmth radiated from hearth, crackling wood glowing orange against tired faces. Pilgrims traded stories of a miraculous spring found after hours thirsting, of a stranger who shared cloak in frost, of a monastery whose doors opened at midnight to faint knock. Stories passed like bread, nourishment shared freely, each tale reminding that road held as many wonders as hardships. When night fell, they slept shoulder to shoulder, breaths mingling in dark like chorus of sighs. Some prayed until sleep claimed them, fingers tangled in rosary beads. Others murmured names of loved ones left behind, hoping each whisper carried across miles like feather on wind. In dreams they walked still, roads stretching endless beneath moonlight, stars guiding as faithfully as by day. Dawn always returned gentle, rosy light brushing eyelids, sparrows chirping as if urging them onward. There came moments when pilgrim felt alone despite crowd, not from loneliness, but from intimacy with self, newly discovered. On ridges where land rolled in waves of gold grass, on forest paths where sunlight filtered through leaves in trembling patterns, on riverbanks where water murmured secrets older than church stone, there, pilgrim met soul unguarded. Some feared this meeting, others embraced it. But all changed by it, motives blurred as journey lengthened. One who began in penance found joy, one who sought miracle learned gratitude for simple bread, one who chased adventure found reverence. Purpose did not remain rigid, like stream bending through meadow, it shifted, carving new truth. Pilgrimage was not linear ascent, it was spiral deepening, drawing traveler inward even as they moved outward across earth. Worn pilgrim badges pinned to cloaks jingled with step, scallop shells clicked softly, leather straps creaked, fabric rustled like leaves swept by wind. Small things held meaning now, pattern of tile in village church, scent of lavender near monastery wall, echo of chant in vaulted apse, warmth of sun through cloud, coolness of stone under palm. Each sensation a thread weaving memory so finely that decades later, one could recall texture of dust or light dancing on chapel floor. On feast days, pilgrims reached towns where streets filled with banners fluttering bright as autumn leaves, and church bells rang in jubilant procession. Festivals welcomed them, simple dances, shared loaves, wooden flutes singing sweet and high. Children ran beside walkers, offering flowers or apple, fascinated by dirt-streaked faces and faraway eyes. Laughter carried through evening air like incense carried through nave, and even those weighed by sorrow felt lifted by moment's grace. At times, crossroad shrines offered small carvings of St. James, staff in hand, cloak flowing, shell at breast, Pilgrims knelt there, forehead to wood, whispering in gratitude for endurance. They left tokens, ribbon, dried flower, stone polished smooth by fingers, lock of hair from child at home. They rose lighter, hearts steadier, knowing saints walked beside them not as untouchable figures but as companions in dust and faith. As they neared western reaches, landscapes changed. Hills rose gentle, forests thinned, and air smelled faintly of sea, though water still miles distant. Clouds rolled low and soft, carrying promise of horizon where land ended. Feet sore, shoulders aching, faces sun-touched and wind-kissed, pilgrims felt anticipation bloom, tender, fragile, luminous. For they sensed closeness not measured by distance, but by spirit's hush. In final miles, many walked slower, not from exhaustion but reverence, each footfall precious, each breath filled with quiet awe. They thought of beginnings, tearful farewells, trembling hopes, burdens once heavy now left behind like shed skin along road. They thought of people met and moments held, of kindness received without asking, of skies under which they had spilled private prayers like seeds into furrows of memory. Pilgrims who once feared they would break, discovered instead they had been remade. Something in them stretched, patience like horizon, hope like sky, humility like earth. And as they approached city where towers pierced clouds and bells carried across wind, they did not feel triumph, but surrender, gentle yielding to grace they had chased and found, not at journey's end, but in each humble step. In that quiet, as road curved toward Santiago's sacred threshold, they breathed deeply and felt peace settle, not loud, not sudden, but slow as dawn spreading across village rooftops. They had become pilgrims not by reaching shrine, but by loving road. And road loved them back, holding their stories in dust and stone, carrying them to place where faith and distance and longing intertwined like threads of ancient tapestry. Soon they would stand before cathedral. Soon they would kneel where generations had knelt. Soon incense would rise like dream into vaulted light. But for this moment, they simply walked, soft, steady, blessed by journey's grace. And the road, endless as hope, whispered one truth to their hearts: to walk toward sacred is itself sacred. Long before words were inked on parchment to describe it, before guidebooks and carved stones marked distance, the Camino spoke in symbols older than language, emblems whispered in wind, etched in wood, carved in weathered stone, tied to pilgrim pack not as ornament but as truth. These symbols did not command attention, they invited remembrance, not to glory but to humility, not to triumph but to surrender. To walk this road was to learn a new alphabet of devotion, one written in shell, in staff, in dust, and in quiet ritual of journey. Foremost among all signs was the scallop shell, simple, curved, ribbed like sunrise across still water. It hung from pilgrim cloaks, tied with twine or leather, swinging softly with each step like sacred heartbeat beside chest. Some shells were polished smooth from ocean shore, others rough as cliffside stone. Each line carved from tip to rim spoke of path, many ridges leading to single point, many lives converging to single purpose. The shell was badge and compass, water cup and offering bowl, token of blessing and passport of spirit. To carry it was to announce not arrival, but intent, a soul set westward, trusting wind and grace. Legend said its grooves mirrored heavenly road, and that when pilgrim drank from it at spring by forest path, they did not merely quench thirst, they tasted memory of sea waiting beyond end of earth. At night, shells rested beside heads on straw, like small moons glowing pale in lantern gloom. At dawn, they tapped gently against staff, reminding wearer that journey is not solitary, for every ridge upon shell echoes one who walked before. Alongside shell came staff, tall, strong, wood smoothed by palm, bark worn away where fingers curled in supplication and fatigue. It was shepherd's tool, protector against wolf and bandit, helper on steep mountain, companion in stream ford. When pilgrim leaned upon it at dusk, It held not only weight of body, but weight of longing. Some staffs bore carvings spiraled like prayer, crosses etched near grip, small bells tied near top that chimed softly, calling angels or simply marking rhythm of soul in motion. Staff struck earth with steady reassurance. Step, breath, pulse, hope. In staff was story. Each dent, each stain, each crack a witness to road's truth. Cloaks too bore meaning, draped heavy across shoulders, wool darkened by rain, bleached by sun, stiff with dust. They were shield against storm and night chill, bed upon earth when shelter scarce, shroud for privacy in moment of grief or prayer. Cloaks marked pilgrim as one set apart, not by pride, but by path chosen. Some cloaks bore simple cross stitched by mother's trembling hand. Others hung plain as humility itself. They held scent of smoke from monastery hearths, of wild thyme crushed under knee during rest, of salt when ocean wind finally greeted traveler at land's end. Around neck or tied to belt hung small gourd, vessel for water, bound in leather net. Its sides swelled round as mercy, darkened by touch and time. Pilgrim would fill it at springs, listening to water glimmer against clay like whispered benediction. A sip held cool grace, a reminder that world, though harsh at times, still offers relief to those who seek with humble step. There too was the pilgrim's pouch, small cloth satchel tied close to chest, carrying modest treasures. Scrap of bread, dried fig, vial of oil for aching limbs, perhaps piece of letter from home worn soft by fingers longing to remember voice of loved one. Within pouch also lay token left at shrines, pebble carried from village gate to be offered at hill of crosses near Santiago, symbol of burden laid down at journey's end. Each pilgrim bent to place stone among countless others, small gesture yet vast in meaning surrender of sorrow to earth that bore them. Badges were collected like prayers made tangible, small tin or bronze emblems purchased at chapels, stamped with saint's visage or holy sign. Worn upon hat or cloak, they glinted at dawn like hammered stars. To see another bearing same mark was to know kinship in dust and devotion. Some badges bore sword and cross of Santiago, others symbol of Mary's protection, others simple fish of early faith. Their metal bent beneath rain, dulled by sun, edges softened by time, yet meaning endured brighter than silver itself. And there was the passport of pilgrims, not paper as world now knows, but leaf of parchment stamped with seals from monasteries, proof not of identity but of faith walked into world. Each stamp gift of welcome, each mark memory of bread shared and prayer whispered. To present it at shrine was not demand for recognition, but offering of journey, humble and sincere as folded hands. When pilgrim traced stamps by candlelight, they saw not ink but moments lived, people met, mercies received. Ritual two-shaped road, weaving sacred rhythm into step. At chapel doors, pilgrims placed hand upon cool stone worn deep by centuries of touch, a groove carved by longing. They crossed threshold as though crossing from world to soul, leaving noise of village and entering silence of hearts. At wells they washed feet, wiping dust gentle as mother's touch, understanding cleansing not as vanity but as gratitude. At sunrise, they lifted face to first light, eyes half closing in reverence, believing rays touched brow as blessing. At night before sleep, they whispered names of those loved and lost, trusting road to carry those prayers where hands could not. Songs accompanied them, low and soft as hum of wind through wheat. Hymns known across kingdoms, psalms murmured in rhythm of staff. Some could not read, yet carried words in memory learned at hearth or church pew. When voices joined, even if only two pilgrims beneath arching branches or star-hung sky, the sound felt larger than world, fragile yet fierce, like flame cupped in palms against night's chill. These songs lifted hearts when limbs ached, wove courage when loneliness pressed heavy, gave shape to faith when words failed. And there were blessings offered by those who did not walk, villagers who drew cross in air above bowed heads, monks who pressed thumb to pilgrim, brow leaving faint trace of oil, old women who placed bread, crust in hand, with whispered prayer, children who ran beside pilgrim gate waving sprigs of rosemary, herbs scented like ancient temple. Such gestures were sacraments of everyday, simple, sincere, suffused with grace that shimmered quiet and soft. Not all road was gentle. There were moments of fear. Yet symbols protected, shell warding danger, staff steadying unsure step, cross bound to cloak warding unseen shadow. Faith hovered like unseen companion, light-footed, steady, offering courage in dark forest path or storm-lashed hilltop. Night sometimes came cold and merciless, stars sharp like shard of ice against velvet dark, but pilgrims wrapped cloak tight, placed shell upon chest, and whispered ancient prayer that rose like smoke into sky that had seen countless travelers before. And even when symbols wore thin, shell cracked, staff splintered, cloak frayed, meaning endured. For these were not ornaments of wealth but talismans of heart, reminders that journey was sacred not for grand gesture but for quiet persistence. Toward end of path, when cathedral bells sounded faint across wind and distant towers teased horizon, pilgrims often paused to strengthen ritual. They washed at streams, brushed dust from cloak, straightened shell at breast. They wanted to arrive not adorned, but prepared, soul steady, spirit open, body weary yet willing. And when they finally knelt at shrine, laying staff beside altar, shell gleaming faint in candle glow, pouch lightened by burdens surrendered to road, they did not feel they had earned grace. They felt they had been carried by it, for symbols did not grant journey meaning, they revealed it. They tethered heart to purpose, guided hand to mercy, shaped breath into prayer. They whispered truth beneath every mile. That pilgrimage was not escape or conquest, but remembrance. Remembrance that human spirit, fragile as clay vessel, can hold light vast as heaven when guided by faith humble as scallop shell on cloak. And so, in dust and dawn, through storm and song, pilgrims carried not merely objects, but echoes of hope, of surrender, of sacred path traced across land and soul alike. Each shell, staff, cloak, pouch, badge, chant, step formed thread in tapestry woven by countless hearts walking towards same distant light. And even now, when fields shift with seasons and mountains hold snow quiet as breath, one may still find scallop shell glinting in morning dew, gourd resting in shadow, staff leaning by chapel door, silent relics, yet vibrant with memory of feet that once walked, souls that once sought, hearts that once whispered into wind their simple truth. I journey not to find heaven, but to remember it. As the Camino unfolded beneath countless steps, its symbols gathered not dust, but memory, deepening, softening, becoming more than objects and gestures. They became breath, intention, and the quiet spine of the journey. What pilgrims carried upon their bodies slowly migrated inward, so that shell hung not only from cloak but from heart, and staff rested not only in hand but in soul. The Camino shaped those who walked it through ritual gentle as morning mist, shaping them not with force but with repetition, like tide smoothing stone, like candle flame polishing darkness into glow. At roadside shrines, pilgrims would pause, hands resting on weathered wood, feeling grooves carved by ancestors in centuries long settled into earth. The cross bore scars, cracks filled by rain and frost, corners worn by palm and forehead bowed, wax stains hardened into amber-like tears. These wooden guardians stood silent among wild thyme and bramble, watching dust float like incense in shafts of sun. Sometimes a pilgrim added fresh flowers or sprig of rosemary still fragrant from garden far behind. Sometimes only tears were left, invisible offering that glimmered briefly before being taken by wind in villages where roofs sloped low and smoke curled warm from stone chimneys. Church bells rang matins and vesper like steady heartbeat of community. Pilgrims heard them across fields and quickened their steps, knowing inside walls awaited coolness, candlelight, and shadow shaped like wings. Entering chapel, they moved slowly, shoulders brushing stone darkened by centuries of breath and hope. They dipped fingers in basin where water stilled, touched brow, chest, shoulders, motion familiar, sacred grounding. Then they knelt, not because they must, but because silence lifted weight from knees and placed it gently on altar of surrender. Sometimes monks chanted behind screen, low hum rising and falling like far-off tide, words of psalm carving air with ancient cadence. Pilgrims sat or knelt, some closing eyes, others gazing toward icon whose paint glimmered faint in candle flame. They did not always understand language, yet meaning carried like fragrance through air. Devotion needs no tongue to speak. Ritual was not instruction, but reminder that world held stillness beyond hunger and blisters, that love older than stone held them even when they wavered. And at times, ritual existed not in chapel but beneath open sky. A pilgrim would stand upon ridge where valley stretched wide and wheat shivered under touch of breeze. There, they removed hat, closed eyes, let wind press against face like gentle hand of unseen friend. They whispered nothing and yet prayed deeply. Sky arched vast, limitless, blue like memory of childhood wonder. Mountains rested heavy and patient. River glinted like ribbon of grace. In such moments, road itself became sanctuary and each breath became rite. Sharing bread was ritual too. When dusk settled like wool over shoulders and travelers found shelter perhaps in humble barn or monastery hall, they brought whatever food remained, crust of loaf, handful of nuts, dried fruit, sweet and shriveled like memory preserved. They broke bread as companions, not strangers. They passed bowl of broth, tore cheese into pieces softened by warmth. Food tasted different on Camino, simpler, more honest, seasoned by hunger and gratitude. Meals became communion, not holy in form, but in spirit, blessings exchanged in quiet nod and tired smile. Feet bore symbols as well, not carved or carried, but earned. Blisters blistered again, skins split, souls hardened. Pilgrims washed feet each night in basin or stream, rubbing gently as if tending sacred relic. Some wrapped cloth around toes, some anointed tender skin with oil, some simply held feet in cool water, sighing deeply as ache eased. To wash feet was more than care. It was reverence, for feet bore whole of journey, carrying body and burden mile after mile. Where nobles once washed servants' feet in gesture of humility, here all washed their own with equal grace. And water ran clear or muddied from dust, carrying pain away like mercy poured over quiet suffering. There were rituals for leaving as well as arriving. When pilgrim departed village at dawn, they often turned once before passing beyond last cottage, lifting hand in farewell to strangers who had offered bed and warmth. Children waved from doorways, roosters called day into being, cats curled on threshold stone. Pilgrims looked back not from regret, but gratitude, knowing each place held part of their story, each doorway sheltering ember of kindness that would carry them through next mile. Some walked with pebble in palm, smooth and cool. They rolled it in fingers when fatigue pressed heavy, using touch to remind heart of vow. That stone, humble as bread crumb, held meaning. At end, they would lay it at Monte do Gozo, hill of joy, where first glimpse of cathedral blessed eyes tired by dust. There, thousands of stones lay, stacked like prayers, small mountain risen from surrender. Pilgrims knelt, placed stone with trembling hand, and breathed relief deep as ocean wind waiting beyond. Candles were lit at chapels, small flames swaying gentle like souls in quiet celebration. Wax dripped down brass holders, pooling at base in shapes formed slowly over years, hardened rivers of prayer. Pilgrims held match, shielded flame from draught, and once wick caught, heart caught also. That candle burned not only for wish or plea, but for all who walked, who suffered, who loved, who hoped. It burned for those left behind and those gone ahead, and wax offered itself until nothing remained but smoke curling upward like sigh. Some pilgrims carried pilgrim books, pages where stamps gathered like constellations. Each stamp spoke of resting place, each ink circle memory sealed in shape. Yet many never looked back at pages except at end, when seeing them felt like seeing own heart mapped. Others carved small marks in staff, notches for each town passed, each river crossed, tally not of achievement, but of grace encountered. Prayer, too, changed along road. At beginning, pilgrims prayed with urgency, lists of needs and wounds spilled like pleas at King's Gate. But gradually prayer thinned into hush, instead of words, breath, instead of supplication, stillness. They learned that prayer can be gaze resting on horizon or hand brushing wildflower or silence shared beside stranger. Faith did not require speech, it required presence. Even greetings became ritual. When pilgrims passed on path, one whispered soft blessing, buen camino, safe road, sacred journey. These simple words, spoken again and again, never wore thin. They lifted like feathery hope, reminding both giver and receiver that each walked not alone. Blessing echoed in valleys and cloisters, carried by wind, settling on shoulders like gentle shawl. As they neared Santiago, rituals deepened. Some walked final miles barefoot, earth cool beneath skin, feeling world directly, without leather or cloth between. Some fasted day before arrival, letting hunger carve space in heart for awe. Some sang softly in language half forgotten, psalms rising shy yet earnest like bird testing wing. Some simply walked in silence, tears breaking quietly, unable to speak what journey meant. Then came moment when city rose from land, towers spearing sky, bells faint across breeze. Ritual completed itself, not in arrival but in final steps. Pilgrims touched shell to chest, held staff firmly, breathed deep. In that breath, every mile lived again. Dust in sandals, dawn survived, storms endured, kindness received, prayers whispered, burdens laid down. They entered city slowly, each footstep soft as prayer. Soon they would kneel at altar, hand upon cool stone polished by love of centuries, forehead bowed not from defeat but humility. Soon incense would lift in great swinging silver vessel, cloud rising like memory of road itself. Soon faces would lift to carved saint above, and hearts would break with gratitude. But for now, ritual lingered, shell tapping cloak, beads brushing thumb, eyes shining with reverence earned by dust, miles, tears, and wonder. Symbols did not end journey. They carried it forward, long after road faded behind. Pilgrim would return home with scallop still tied to pack, staff leaned by hearth, cloak folded by bed. Yet even without objects, ritual endured. Every dawn became reminder of road's quiet awakening. Every step on humble earth echoed memory of sacred miles. Every blessing whispered to stranger held remembrance of blessings once heard on lonely path. For pilgrimage does not stay where it ends. It moves into life lived after, into hands that now give softer, into voice that speaks gentler, into heart that forgives quicker, into eyes that see holy in ordinary field and cup and star. Symbols and rituals were never souvenirs. They were seeds planted in spirit, blooming in time beyond road. And somewhere far west, beneath cathedral spires, shells still gleam in morning light, staffs rest against old stone, candles flicker beneath arch carved by ancients, and names are whispered into air heavy with incense and longing. Pilgrims come and pilgrims go, but symbols remain, quiet, humble, eternal, pointing not to shrine alone, but to transformation found in journey walked with open heart. Morning on the Camino did not announce itself with trumpet or command, but with hush that slowly blossomed into light. In fields where wildflowers bowed with dew, in monastery cloisters where stone held night's cool breath, in barns where pilgrims huddled close like sparrows seeking warmth, dawn seeped gently across the world. First came pale thinning of darkness, then a faint silver thread at horizon, then birds stirring in hedges, their songs tentative, as though blessing day before giving it fully to waking world. Pilgrims rose slowly, limbs stiff from straw mattress or bare planks, muscles murmuring tired gratitude. Cloaks were shaken free of dust, boots laced with fingers numb from morning chill, staffs lifted with quiet familiarity. Some crossed themselves, some whispered small prayer, others simply breathed deeply, letting cool air fill chest like quiet hymn. Bread was broken, rough and coarse, crumb clinging to fingertips, often dry but always precious. If fortune smiled, there was cheese or fig, or warm broth poured by ghost-like monk moving soft in shadows before dawn bell. And water was sipped from gourd, clean and cold, tasting faintly of stone and night. There was no hurry, yet always a sense of movement, as though world itself urged them forward with gentle hand. They stepped into morning mist, cloaks brushing wet grass, boots pressing soft earth that yielded beneath weight, then held steady. Breath plumed in air like incense rising. Some walked alone, silent companion to sky. Others walked in clusters of 3 or 4, conversation low as bees in summer orchard, sharing memories of home, hopes for day ahead, stories from days behind. As sun climbed, warmth unfolded like blessing. Shadows softened, fields brightened, paths shimmered with promise. On dusty stretches, small stones shifted beneath soles, crunching like whispered prayer grains. On forest trails, pine needles cushioned steps, air fragrant with resin and earth. Through towns, pilgrim feet tapped worn cobbles, rhythms echoing across morning marketplace where bakers pulled warm loaves from ovens and merchants swept door fronts free of dust. Hunger often followed shortly after leaving shelter, but hunger on road was different, not gnawing despair, but steady companion reminding body it lived, moved, yearned. When midday arrived, heat of sun pressed heavy, urging rest. Pilgrims found shade beneath olive tree or arch of ruined wall, unwrapped humble meal. Crust, handful of nuts, chunk of cheese grown soft in pouch, water cherished for each swallow. They sat quietly, watching ants wander through grass, listening to breeze through wheat, feeling heartbeats slow. Sometimes fellow travelers joined without word. A nod, a shared glance, cloak spread beside another, companionship formed not through talk, but presence. Bread exchanged for dried pear, a bite of salt fish offered for sip of wine saved since village last evening. And once appetite eased and limbs rested, silence stretched warm between them like comforter woven from trust. Then staff lifted again, cloaks refastened, and road resumed. Some days offered long miles through plain where horizons stretched endless, sky vast as prayer. Wind brushed hair and face, whispering through grass, sweet and soft. Cattle grazed slow, bells chiming like distant monastery call. Farmers tilled soil with ox and wooden plow, pausing to watch pilgrims pass, hand raising in blessing or curious greeting. Children ran laughter-filled beside road for few joyful steps, then returned to chores. Other days demanded grit, steep incline where breath labored, or path slick with rain where mud clung heavy to boot, doubling weight with each step. Mountain passes where fog thickened, hiding trail until staff learned to lead, tapping rock ahead. River crossings where stones shifted underfoot and water lapped ankles cold as winter memory. Hardship, yes, but pilgrimage taught endurance as gently as it taught humility. And always after labor came rest, warm fire in inn, dry cloak, bowl of stew fragrant with herbs, bed of straw soft as blessing. Evening drew near with golden hush. Shadows lengthened, air cooled, swallows dipped through dusk like ink strokes across parchment sky. Pilgrims sought roof, monastery dormitory, village inn, shepherd barn offered by kind farmer or chapel whose porch welcomed strangers each night. Those without shelter slept under stars, cloaks drawn tight, staff close at hand. Wind moved gentle, moon cast silver path along fields, and night insects sang soft serenade. Supper was humble lentils, dark bread, sometimes broth if kitchen kind, sometimes only what pilgrim carried from morning. Yet taste felt rich after days' walk, seasoned not with spice but gratitude. They sat around hearth or simple fire in open field, embers glowing like tiny universes. Sparks lifted towards sky, disappearing into constellation of stars. Conversation rose low, murmurs of hope, laughter soft, sometimes tears glistening in firelight. For night brought tenderness, hearts opened like evening flowers as shadows lengthened. After meal, many washed feet in basin or stream, each motion tender, almost reverent. Sore heels and cracked skin anointed with oil, bandages wrapped, quiet sigh of relief breathed. Feet had carried them faithfully, care was offering in return. Then prayers whispered, some on knees before wooden crucifix, others lying back against pack gazing skyward. Stars glimmered like souls of pilgrims long gone, watching, blessing, remembering. Wind brushed faces like cool fingers smoothing worry from brow. In shelter halls monks chanted compline, final prayer of day, voices rising in harmonies that wrapped pilgrims in serenity. Candles flickered gold against stone, smoke curling upward in ethereal ribbon. Pilgrims settled on pallets, straw rustling beneath weight, wool cloak pulled like wing across shoulder. Murmurs quieted, then faded. Only crackle of ember, occasional sigh, soft breath like ocean tide in quiet cove. Rest came, deep and honest, dream a gentle drift across meadow of memory. Rain sometimes fell in night, pattering soft on roof or cloak. Pilgrims curled tighter, warmth held close to heart. Storms sometimes roared, wind howling past shutters like old wolf. Yet even then, peace held. For shelter was miracle. Even cold earth felt gift to weary limbs. Dawn always returned, and with its song of sparrow, glow in east sky, rustle of travelers preparing once more to meet horizon. Every day the same, yet never same. Every sunrise a beginning, each sunset a benediction. Pilgrims learn to live not in tomorrow or yesterday, but in step before them, meal beside them, breath within them. Worry dissolved like frost when sun touches field, desire quieted. Joy awakened in smallest things, warmth of bread, kindness of stranger, beauty of dew on spiderweb, scent of pine, sound of distant church bell calling faithful to rest. Daily life on road did not feel extraordinary, yet it shaped souls as rivers shape stones, slowly, gently, unceasingly. Each task simple: walk, eat, rest, pray. Each gesture imbued with meaning, sharing crust, offering smile, lifting tired fellow traveler to feet. Pilgrimage made saints not through miracles, but through small mercies repeated day after day, mile after mile. And beneath everything, beneath hunger, beneath fatigue, beneath conversation and silence, lived steady hum of purpose. It thrummed through ground beneath sandals, shimmered through sky, glowed in dust warming under sun. Purpose not urgent or fierce, but patient, enduring, soft as memory of mother's voice in childhood dusk. Each pilgrim carried it like hidden ember, fanned gently by road and breath, until ember warmed body and mind like fire that does not burn, only heals. As night settled once more and pilgrims lay beneath stars or roof of kindly stranger, one truth wrapped them as surely as cloak against chill. A day walked in humility is a prayer. And on the Camino, each day was prayer unending, whispered not in words, but in dust and dawn. As days gathered behind them like fallen petals on a wind-touched path, pilgrims grew accustomed to the rhythm of life, shaped not by bells of commerce nor demands of court, but by sky, hunger, and grace. Routine, once unfamiliar, sank into bones like warmth into stone after long afternoon sun. Each dawn felt less like beginning of journey, and more like continuation of ancient song they now knew by heart. Some mornings brought thick mist, pale and trembling over fields, hiding road as though world hesitated to reveal itself too quickly. Pilgrims walked through whiteness, footsteps muffled, breath merging with fog. Trees appeared slowly from vale, trunks rising like pillars in cathedral carved by nature, branches arching overhead like ribbed vaults. There, silence was total, soft, expectant. Even birds whispered. Pilgrims moved with care, each step quiet, as though entering sacred chamber where even thought felt too loud. Then sun-pierced veil, gold pouring across landscape with gentle triumph, and mist thinned, drifting skyward like incense ascending unseen altar. Pilgrims paused, heads tilted, faces warmed. Cloaks brightened, earth revealed its details, dew-silvered leaves, cobwebs glittering like spun glass, footprints left by wild deer beneath hedgerow. The world re-emerged not from nothingness, but from hush, like hymn rising from deep stillness. Some days clouds gathered and held all morning, sky heavy, thick with promise of rain. Pilgrims wrapped cloaks close, hoods drawn, feeling cool breath of storm before it fell. When rain came, it came soft at first, droplets tapping earth like fingertips on drum. Then harder, faster, until path turned river and wool grew heavy and hair clung to brow. Faces lifted anyway, some laughing, some grim but steady. They walked not to escape rain, but to move through it, knowing that storms, like suffering, do not last forever when met with patience. When downpour eased, village smoke rose in distant curl above trees, and pilgrims sought warmth. In kitchens of humble inns or monastery refectories, fire crackled, steam lifted from bowls of fragrant broth. Cloaks hung to dry near hearthstones still warm from morning baking. Laughter sometimes bubbled, quiet, surprised, as though joy discovered itself accidentally after long silence. Outside, rain dripped from eaves in steady rhythm, like beads falling from rosary string loosened by gentle hand. Sometimes no village came, no roof offered shelter. Then pilgrims built small fire where trees shielded wind, sparks rising like souls ascending in night. Bread toasted on stone, simple and rough, tasted like feast in hunger's company. They ate slowly, hands warmed by flame, watching sky shift from silver to violet to deep blue. Stars appeared one by one, shy at first, then bold, until night became river of shimmering memory. There, under heaven's vast hush, pilgrims lay wrapped in cloak and sky, eyes closing to sound of wind brushing grass and fire sighing into embers. Sleep on road was not always gentle. Wolves howled in distant hills, owls called with voices ancient as forest roots, branches creaked in wind, and cold pressed bone. Yet even discomfort felt sacred, a reminder of flesh and breath and finite life held under infinite sky. Pilgrims curled close to earth, trusting it like old friend, trusting God to watch where their eyes could not. Fear softened not by absence of danger, but by presence of faith. Some days brought company, others brought solitude. In groups, pilgrims shared stories, tales of wheat harvests and river crossings, of sons gone to war and daughters wed beneath orchard blossoms. They spoke of saints, of miracles whispered by monks in cloister gardens, of legends carved on chapel doors by hands now dust. Stories traveled like warm bread passed between hands, nourishing body and heart. Silence followed at times, but silence no longer felt empty. It felt companionable, full of presence. In solitude, travelers discovered inner roads, twisting deeper than any path cut into soil. They walked within as much as without, remembering past seasons of joy and sorrow, forgiving themselves slowly, forgiving others with tenderness earned by miles. They learned to observe how sparrow tilts head before launching into flight, how riverbank mud holds prints of fox and bird beside each other, how light shifts through day like prayer entering stone basilica. Appreciation sharpened, reverence blossomed. Meals varied with generosity of land and kindness of stranger. Some afternoons, pilgrims found cheese offered by shepherd, milk still warm from morning milking, flavor rich and soft. Other times, monastery table held beans simmered with herbs, bread thick with grain, ale poured into carved wood cup. In lean moments, only dried fruit remained, eaten slowly, seed by seed. each bite a reminder that nourishment sometimes hides in smallest gift. Occasionally, feast-blessed road. A village festival, banners fluttering as if caught in laughter, musicians playing flute and drum, bread ovens open to street, offering loaves fragrant with anise and honey. Pilgrims, dusty and tired, found themselves welcomed without question, children offering flowers, women sprinkling herbs as blessing, elders pressing hands in greeting. Even weary souls felt lifted, not by grandeur, but by warmth of human kindness given freely. Danger lived on path as shadows live beneath branches. Rivers swollen from storm threatened crossing, bandits lurked along forgotten bends where trees grew thick and light scarce. Pilgrims walked alert, staff ready, hearts steady. Yet most dangers passed like cloud, glimpsed, not grasping. Travelers protected each other, forming small circles at night, taking turns keeping watch, trusting divine hand to guide. At times, injury slowed pace. Twist of ankle, blister deep as sorrow, fever that burned skin and blurred sight. When one stumbled, another paused. When one could not continue, others lifted. Pilgrimage taught that strength lies not in independence, but in willingness to lean on staff, on companion, on grace. And so no one truly walked alone, for hands reached, voices soothed, prayers wrapped around aching bodies like wool blanket against night's chill. Every village chapel felt sanctuary, stone worn smooth by touch, candles flickering in glass, statues carved with tenderness and tears. Pilgrims knelt, letting fatigue fall away like cloaks set down at door. Some slept briefly on cool bench, trusting sacred space to cradle them. Others sat in corner and wept quietly, tears gentle as rain, grief flowing but not drowning. In such places, soul found rest deeper than sleep. Evening came always with hush. Sky softened lavender, birds drew line across horizon wing to wing, bells tolled once more, low and steady. Pilgrims gathered for night either in hall or open field, laying cloak over earth like altar cloth. They ate final crumbs, drank last sip of water, whispered last gratitude. Flame dimmed and breath slowed, merging with rustle of grass, with distant river, with wind threading through branches like harp string touched by unseen fingers. And in darkness, hearts beat steady like footsteps carried still within dream. Thus life on Camino unfolded, not dramatic, not swift, but deep as wellspring. Each day carved pilgrim into gentler shape, smoothing haste into patience, carving pride into humility, polishing despair into quiet hope. And in these quiet rhythms, bread shared, feet washed, sky watched, tears shed, prayer whispered, pilgrimage revealed itself not as journey to shrine, but as return to essence. For traveler slowly learned that road itself was chapel, sky its vault, earth its altar, companions its congregation, silence its hymn. And each step, no matter how small or weary, was offering. Even now, when pilgrims rest and close eyes in fields where wild thyme breathes fragrance into twilight air, when stars burn clear and ancient above, they feel truth settle soft in chest. To live simply, to walk humbly, to welcome each dawn as gift, this is holy. Long before a pilgrim ever saw spires or felt cool arching shadow fall across weary shoulders, the road whispered of sanctuary built not in haste, but in devotion. Cathedrals rose slowly across centuries, their foundations laid by hands roughened from quarry dust and winter frost, their walls climbing inch by inch toward heaven, as though earth itself yearned to pray. These sacred structures did not stand merely as monuments to faith, but as lanterns for travelers, steady flames guiding footsteps across fields, mountains, and valleys, promising rest, warmth, and blessing beneath vaults carved like heaven's own ribs. From distant hilltops, pilgrims first glimpsed towers piercing sky, stone fingers lifted in eternal supplication, catching early sunlight until they gleamed pale gold. That sight alone could shake tired hearts awake, filling them with sudden breath, renewed strength. Bells rang across countryside like echo of angels' call, low and deep, rolling through meadow like evening tide. To hear such sound was to remember that even the weary and dust-stained belonged to something greater, something patient and luminous. The road might be long and feet sore, but sanctuary awaited, shaped by devotion long before they began their own journey. Cathedrals along the pilgrimage route were not mere houses of worship. They were shelters of soul and flesh alike. Pilgrims crossed threshold beneath carved arch where saints and angels stood frozen in stone, wings outspread, hands raised in blessing, eyes softened by centuries of candlelight flickering below. Feet passed over floors worn smooth by countless steps, each footprint a prayer left behind, each stone polished by longing and gratitude. In vast nave, silence pooled like dusk light in forest clearing, sacred and deep. Even whisper seemed loud beneath vaults, where ribbed arches soared like ribs of great ships sailing toward eternity. Light filtered through stained glass windows, fragments of ruby, sapphire, emerald falling across stone like fallen stars. Colors danced upon weary faces, painting cheeks violet and gold, making pilgrims glow as though touched by dawn itself. Stories lived in those pains, saints kneeling in devotion, miracles rising from humble soil, Christ walking sea with calm gaze. Pilgrims traced scenes with eyes heavy from miles, hearts opening like soft petals under morning dew. They knelt, letting light settle upon shoulders like warm benediction, feeling breath slow, tears threatened gentle at corner of lashes. Within chapels, relics rested, bone of saint, sliver of cross, garment touched by miracle. Pilgrims approached slowly, staff quiet against stone, head bowed. They touched forehead to cool marble edge of shrine, whispered name of loved one or prayer carried since village far behind. Some felt warmth bloom in chest, others felt ache loosen, others felt nothing but peace, soft, steady, profound. When they stood again, faces calm, footsteps lighter, as though burden laid down if only for a moment. And beyond cathedrals rose bridges, silent and humble as servants, spanning rivers deep and wide. Without bridge, pilgrimage could not exist. With it, world opened. Some bridges were simple wood beams, slick with morning dew, creaking under weight of tired feet. Others grand, carved stone arches stretching like open arms across water. Water rushed below, white and cold, carrying leaves, light, and memory. Pilgrims paused at midpoint, leaning over worn parapet to watch river glitter under sun. Flow reminded them of journey, always moving, shaping valley and heart alike, steady as prayer whispered day after day. Each bridge crossed felt symbolic, carrying them not only over river but across doubt, across weariness, into new stretch of hope. Many bridges bore carvings, small cross chiseled above keystone, inscription faint from centuries of rain. Pilgrims traced those marks with fingertips, feeling rough groove like pulse beneath skin. Knights once guarded some crossings, their armor gleaming in midday sun, swords at rest, watching for danger from thieves or wildness of world. Their presence now lived in memory and broken statue, yet pilgrims still felt unseen protection at each span, as though righteous spirits lingered, guiding and sheltering those left vulnerable by road. And then there were monasteries, havens of stillness tucked in hills, cloisters warmed by lamp and prayer. Monks lived quiet as stones, hands clasped in devotion, voices rising in chants smooth as river over pebbles. Pilgrims approached gates humbly, knocking with staff, cloak heavy with dust. Monastic brothers opened door with nod gentle as blessing, offering bread, soup, straw bed, basin of water. Hospitality did not question, did not weigh worth, it simply gave. For in every weary traveler, monks saw holy traveler. In every blistered foot, they saw Christ walking earth once more. Within cloister gardens, herbs grew fragrant, mint, thyme, lavender, rosemary. Bees murmured like monks reciting psalms. Pilgrims sat on low stone benches, bandages changed with gentle touch, wounds washed in warm water perfumed by crushed herbs. Brothers did not speak often, but presence alone healed. Pilgrims breathed deep, tasting calm in every lungful, as though rest settled into bones like sacred oil poured slowly, reverently. Some monks were healers, preparing salves from honey and wax, laying leaves on bruises, mixing elixirs in clay bowls with care. Others were scribes, quills whispering across vellum, preserving wisdom while world outside roamed wild. Night in monastery wrapped pilgrims like soft wool. Compline whispered through hall, Gregorian tones rising and falling like wind in tall grass beneath stars. Pilgrims lay upon pallets, shadows flickering on ceiling, scent of beeswax candle drifting soft. Outside, garden rested, fountains murmured, and silent figure walked cloister arms in meditative prayer, footsteps barely touching flagstone. Peace settled as gently as feather on still pond. Outside sacred walls, road welcomed them again at dawn. Bell tolled, gates opened, blessings murmured. Pilgrims stepped forward renewed, eyes brighter, shoulders free of yesterday's weight. Monasteries did not hold them, they sent them, quiet priests of road, guardians of soul's flame, whispering not stay but go, for journey itself held sanctity. Everywhere along the Camino, holy sheltered humble. Stone lifted weary, water guided, cloister healed, bridge carried, cathedral inspired. These structures born of devotion and labor stood not as ends but companions, tutors of heart teaching lessons without tongue, patience, reverence, humility, endurance, gratitude. Pilgrims learned that each stone placed by unknown hands centuries before was prayer solidified. Cathedral walls were scripture carved into earth. Bridge arches were promises made in mortar. Monastery gates were mercy built in timber and iron. And as they walked from one sacred shelter to next, pilgrims carried quiet knowing. Though feet moved through dust and mud, spirit walked in architecture of grace. And always, horizon waited, distant, softly glowing, calling them onward with whisper not of urgency, but invitation. Come. Walk a little farther. There is still beauty ahead. And so they went, footsteps steady, hearts open, eyes lifted toward towers yet unseen, ready to enter next sanctuary carved by hands and blessed by centuries of faithful passing. As pilgrims walked deeper into the heart of old Christendom, the architecture of devotion no longer appeared merely as refuge, but as revelation. Each stone seemed to speak, each arch to breathe, each bell tower to lift prayers beyond mortal reach. The closer they came to Santiago, the more sacred the very air felt, as though centuries of whispered faith clung to wind like incense that never quite faded. Sometimes, pilgrims encountered small chapels perched atop hills, lonely and weathered, walls leaning slightly as though world wore them thin. Their doors creaked when pushed, hinges sighing with age. Inside, sunlight spilled through narrow slit windows, illuminating dust that floated like drifting souls. A single bench waited, a single cross stood, simple as hunger, holy as dawn. Here, fatigue dissolved into stillness. Pilgrims placed hands on cold stone altar and felt something ancient pulse beneath fingertips. Not power, but presence, quiet and steadfast on other days, they reached great sanctuaries risen like mountains from plain. Towers soared, windows blazed jewel tones, cloisters stretched peaceful as monastic breath. Stone lions guarded entrances, saints watched from niches deep enough to hold twilight. Pilgrims crossed thresholds in hush, steps soft as if sacred floor might remember every footfall and tell heaven who walked in humility. Organ pipes slept above, waiting for Sunday when notes rolled like thunder softened by mercy. Inside, sound softened, slowed, became prayer by mere echo. Vaults and ribs and pointed arches rose like trees in enchanted forest, not built, but grown from devotion. Pillars bore weight with patient dignity, capitals carved with leaves, beasts, angels, scenes from scripture, every detail a sermon without voice. Pilgrims moved slowly, eyes lifted, hearts stretched by scale of hope made stone. In this vastness, their smallness became grace, not shame. To be small before sacred was gift. Then there were bridges more ancient than some kingdoms, moss clinging to stone, arches humped like backs of sleeping beasts. Pilgrims crossed them where rivers ran fierce in spring flood or murmured like gentle lullaby in summer lull. Water shimmered gold at sunset, silver at dawn, black as ink under moon. Pilgrims paused midway always and leaned over, watching reflection ripple, not out of vanity, but recognition. It felt right to see oneself blurred, softened, carried by movement. Nothing on Camino stayed rigid. Water taught them to yield. Some bridges bore chapels at midpoint, tiny sanctuaries above rushing current. Pilgrims climbed narrow stairs, knelt in cramped wooden benches, feeling river thunder beneath them as though prayer had heartbeat. They lit candles against wind, flame bending yet refusing extinction. In that space where water and stone met, faith felt simple and strong, like root clinging to earth. Where land was treacherous, orders of knights once guarded passage. The Knights of Santiago, the Hospitallers, the Templars, swords sheathed until needed, hearts sworn not to conquest but protection. Their castles, now quiet ruins or sturdy keeps, rose a long path like stern guardians turned to gentle memory. Pilgrims traced carvings left by armored hands, felt weight of forgotten vows in very air. Some brothers still lived, humble warriors tending sick, guiding lost, feeding hungry. Not nobles in shining mail, but men of straw mattress and cold morning ablutions, devoting strength not to battle but to mercy. Hospital churches offered solace where roads converged, where many weary souls gathered like tributaries joining river. There monks washed wounds, women mended cloaks, children carried jugs of water. Pilgrims left offerings when they could, coin, loaf, labor. Walls echoed with languages from far kingdoms, yet all voices softened at altar, made equal by dust of road and holiness of ritual. Fellowship lived not in shared homeland, but shared journey. At some monasteries, libraries glowed by candlelight. Books rested bound in leather cracked by time, pages thick as winter cloth. Pilgrims who once held plough or sword sat in awe at sight of words preserved like relics. Sometimes a monk read softly, lines in Latin rising and falling like chant. Pilgrims did not understand, yet did, for meaning moved deeper than tongue, touching bone and memory like lullaby from childhood long buried. In gardens where cloister walls held peace safe from world's roar, herbs grew scentful, birds hopped near stone fountains, water dripped steady as rosary bead falling from hand. Pilgrims rested on bench warmed by sun, feeling life return to limbs, calm seep into breath. They watched monks tend vines, prune roses, harvest mint, each action quiet devotion. Even act of pulling weed became prayer, done without rush, without complaint. Pilgrims learned holiness not loud, not grand, gentle, patient, humble in earth-stained cloak. Even roadside crosses, simple and unadorned, felt like points where heaven touched soil. Pilgrims paused, tracing wood grain worn smooth by thousands of hands, feeling relief in surrender. Cross did not condemn, it comforted, reminding tired spirit that suffering walked beside redemption and both belonged to journey. And when night fell, sometimes they reached refuges tended by sisters, faces soft as candlelight. Women washed feet, offered wool blankets, placed bread gently into shaking hands. Their murmured blessings sounded like lullaby of mercy. Pilgrims slept with stomach full, heart eased, spirit held like child in arms of mother unseen. But road was not only sacred stone and monastic grace. Between cathedrals lay wilderness. Between bridges, long fields. Between monasteries, pasture and wood, cliff and valley. Holiness moved in both, equal weight in cloister silence and crow's cry above wheat. Pilgrims learned to read sky as scripture, wind as psalm, river as hymn. On Camino, World itself became temple, each hill and hedge a pew, each sunrise a sermon whispered gentle into waking soul. As Santiago drew nearer, the structures of faith seemed to multiply, crosses on hilltops, chapels like pearls strung across green necklace of countryside, bells tolling from unseen belfry miles ahead. Roads widened, travelers increased, voices rose in joy and fatigue. Anticipation trembled in air like string plucked by unseen hand. Pilgrims could feel cathedral before they saw it, could sense its weight in horizon, its music in wind, could imagine vaulted breath, incense swirl, relic at heart of stone labyrinth. They walked slower, not from weariness, but reverence. Land prepared them, villages quiet, shepherds nodding slow blessing, monks waving farewell from cloister arch, candles flickering in roadside niches as if lighting way to final altar. Then one dawn, or dusk, depending on fate's poetry, they crested hill and saw it. Spires rose through morning mist or evening gold. Bells tolled across valley like ocean waves rolling eternity. Pilgrims stopped, breath stolen by beauty and relief. Some laughed, some cried, some knelt, hands pressed earth. Staff shook in trembling fingers. The sight was not triumph but tenderness. They had not conquered distance, they had been carried through it. Bridges, cloisters, towers, bells, all led here. All whispered same truth. Journey was prayer, prayer was life, life was offering. Yet even here they knew arrival not end, only rest. Cathedral stood not as final destination, but as door, door to gratitude, door to humility renewed, door to understanding that God waits not only at shrine, but on road, in pain, in hunger, in bread shared, in foot washed, in silence held, in every mile walked with open heart. And as they descended hill toward Santiago, staff tapping earth soft as heartbeat, cloak fluttering like tired wing, shell resting near chest like memory of ocean, they carried sacred knowing. Stone can shelter body for night. Faith shelters soul for life. But it is journey that builds cathedral within. There are moments in a pilgrimage when distance ceases to feel like measure of earth and instead becomes measure of heart. As pilgrims neared Santiago, the world seemed to hold its breath. Hills rolled softer, villages grew quieter, and every breeze tasted faintly of incense, as though cathedral air drifted outward to greet those still miles away. The road felt gentler, though bodies were weary, perhaps because the land knew how much tenderness these souls deserved after so many mornings rising before dawn, so many evenings sinking into straw, so many prayers whispered into twilight. The hill came at last, Monte do Gozo, the hill of joy, where pilgrims climbed with trembling anticipation. Some walked quickly, hearts racing. Others paused often, unwilling to rush the moment. And then it appeared, not in sudden miracle, but like revelation rising slow as dawn. Towers and spires pierced the horizon, lifting sky rather than touching it. Bells sounded, distant yet thunderous in soul, as though earth itself rang in welcome. Faces softened, shoulders slumped with relief, tears blurred vision though wind dried them almost as soon as they fell. Some sank to knees upon gritty path, palms pressed to ground, forehead bowed. Others simply stood still, breath caught, unable to speak. Laughter mingled with sobs, joy braided with exhaustion. They were pilgrims, and the city saw them, knew them, held them. Far below, Santiago waited, not as destination, but as embrace. And slowly, staff steadying trembling legs, pilgrims descended, each step heavy, as if world suddenly remembered gravity after long suspension in hope. Streets narrowed as they neared the heart. Stone beneath boots felt ancient, worn smooth by millions of souls who had wandered from distant lands to this very place. The sound changed, boots clattering on cobblestone, voices hushed, fountain murmuring. Smoke drifted from hearths, bread scent floated warm from bakery hidden behind wooden door. Some pilgrims touched walls as they passed, palms against stone warm from sun, seeking grounding, reassurance that they truly walked here, that this was not dream conjured from exhaustion. Then, through archway, cathedral rose, colossal, solemn, luminous. Facades sculpted with saints and prophets, apostles carved so tenderly that centuries of rain had not stolen grace from their faces. Every figure watched, silent, compassionate witness to generations of weary arrivals. Steps stretched wide as welcome, and pilgrims crossed plaza with slow reverence. Sun fell across spires, gilding edges and warming tears still clinging to skin. Cloaks fluttered in breeze, shells glinted pale white in afternoon light like small moons resting on hearts. At foot of cathedral many paused, unsure how to take next step, not from doubt but humility. This was not triumph, it was surrender. Then they climbed, each step a lifetime, each breath a prayer. Staff set aside, hand brushing stone rail worn smooth by ancestors. The great doors did not feel like threshold to building, but to tenderness itself. Eyes lifted wide, heart trembling, and then they entered. Inside, quiet was not silence, it was fullness, weight, grace thick as air before rain. Incense lingered, sweet and ancient, rising in slow spirals like memory made visible. Candles flickered, gold against shadow, each flame fragile yet fierce, as if holding space for every soul who had walked under sun and storm to kneel here. Naves stretched vast, columns reaching like forest trunks into canopy of vault above. Light filtered through windows of stained glass, scattering color like blessing ruby, emerald, sapphire, amber pouring across flagged stone in trembling pools. Pilgrims stepped forward, breath deep, slow. Sound softened, footsteps quiet as cloth sliding across altar, whisper of prayer against stone pillar. Some knelt immediately, knees falling to floor with soft thud, forehead touching cool stone. Others stood still, unable to move, as though heart needed time to expand enough to hold this moment. A few remained near entrance, leaning staff against wall, closing eyes, letting tears trace dust that had clung since distant country. Such tears were not sorrow, they were release, gratitude, awe, humility, love in its purest, quietest form. Mass rose in song, choir voices swelling like sunrise light through stained glass. Words drifted through air reverent as snow, clear as river over stone. Pilgrims found pews, shoulders touching strangers who no longer felt like strangers. Cloaks gathered around wood benches, some patched, some frayed, all beautiful with miles and meaning. Hands folded, hands trembled, hands rested open, ready to receive peace after so much giving. In shadowed chapel lay relic of St. James, apostle, traveler, flame of devotion centuries burning. Silver tomb glimmered softly under candlelight, fragile radiance pooling around it like spilled moon. Pilgrims approached slowly, reverently, steps soft, breath shallow. Some touched forehead to cold metal edge, others knelt, others simply watched, feeling presence like gentle hand upon heart. They did not beg, demand, or expect miracle. Road had already given miracle in each footstep endured. They only offered themselves, wounds, hopes, memories, fatigue, placing heart, naked and humble, before ancient faith. Then came moment many had dreamed through endless roads. The Botafumeiro, great censer, swinging like silver comet through sacred air. Ropes creaked, men guided ark, and vessel soared, trailing incense in wave that washed congregation with sweet smoke. It swung high, near ceiling, near heaven, each past sweeping fragrance that felt like forgiveness descending. Pilgrims watched, eyes wide, tears glimmering, smoke curling around them like prayer incarnate. Here body and soul felt held, lifted, sanctified by grace older than stone. Later, outside cathedral doors, square filled with pilgrims resting in warm stone embrace of plaza. Some lay back, gazing at towers, letting fatigue settle like blanket. Others laughed through tears, telling fragments of road, holding hands of strangers who had become kin by dust and hope. Shells clicked gently against wood, staffs rested horizontal across knees, boots removed to show feet bruised but alive. They sat together in sunlight soft and golden, letting bells wash over them like lullaby sung by ancient earth. Even silence among them felt sacred. No need to speak, journey spoke louder than words. They belonged to road, to each other, to God, to moment. Peace did not shout, it breathed. It lived in small exhale, in still shoulder touching shoulder, in knowing that no one arrived unbroken, and that break was blessing, not wound. As shadows lengthened across square and pigeons fluttered lazily through warm air, pilgrims lifted shells, touched them gently, whispering prayer. For Camino had not ended, not truly. Something within them understood. This place, magnificent as it was, holy as it stood, was not end of journey but its deep breath. Tomorrow they might continue to Finisterre, to see where horizon opened like eternity, or return home to life familiar, yet forever changed. But this moment belonged only to arrival, to sacred pause between miles walked and miles remembered. And beneath spires reaching sky, under light that seemed to rise instead of fall, they felt quiet truth fill their hearts like wine in chalice raised at feast. Home is not where journey ends. Home is where soul awakens. And here, in stone cradle of Santiago, souls awoke, gently, fully, gratefully. When dawn returned to Santiago, it did not wake the pilgrims abruptly. Rather, it caressed them awake, as if light itself knew they had earned rest beyond measure. The sky warmed slowly, a gold that seemed softer here than anywhere behind them on the road, as though heaven, too, wished to speak kindly on this final morning. Pilgrims stirred in dormitories, in modest inns, in cloisters where monks whispered their first prayers of the day. They woke not with urgency, but with reverence, as if rising within sacred pause between ending and beginning. Feet that once ached fiercely now felt strangely weightless, freed from long march. Cloaks hung still, shells swayed gently with breathing, staffs leaned patiently against walls, as though they too understood they were companions resting after loyal service. Pilgrims stepped out into cool morning air, and the city's stones glowed faint honey under first light. Even pigeons moved lazily across the plaza, as if honoring quiet victory. Many returned to cathedral before speaking to anyone, drawn not by custom, but by longing. They walked slowly across square, some barefoot, soles pressing cold stone, savoring contact with earth that marked arrival. Doors opened with low groan, ancient as time, and pilgrims entered again, breath held. The interior seemed even more luminous than day before, light filtered through stained glass with tenderness like mother's hand smoothing fevered brow. Silence sat heavy and warm, like wool cloak across shoulders. Some sat in pews, gazing at altar without need for thought. Others went straight to Apostle's shrine, hands trembling once more as they touched silver casing. They felt not triumph but humility, not conquest but completion. A few bowed their heads and wept again, not tears of effort this time, but of surrender, gratitude, recognition of fragility and grace intertwined. Some whispered names of those who could not come. Others whispered nothing at all. In deepest moments of meaning, silence speaks most truly. Later, on cathedral steps, sunlight spread like blessing. Pilgrims gathered slowly, forming small knots of conversation, exchanging quiet smiles, understanding in eyes without need for speech. There was no crowd's roar, no celebration of conquest, only soft laughter, hushed gratitude, gentle presence. A pilgrim offered bread to another, tearing peace and pressing into hand with kindness older than tongues. Another washed friends' feet from waters drawn from nearby fountain, gesture of humility echoing across centuries. Some prepared now for final tradition. The walk beyond Santiago, further west, toward Finisterre, Finis Terre, the end of the earth. For some, arrival here was not finish but turning point, path no longer toward shrine but toward sea, where horizon unrolled like eternity across silver water. They tied shells more firmly to packs, tightened straps on worn boots, and lifted staffs once more, not with burden now, but with reverence renewed. They did not rush. They moved like those who knew that sacred time obeys no clock. Others remained, feeling no pull beyond these stones. They wished to sit in plaza and watch morning unfold, to listen to bells ring hours into still air, to allow heart to expand slowly around truth that pilgrimage had planted like seed in soil softened by tears and miles. Some wandered streets, admiring houses with flower-laden balconies, narrow lanes shaped like memory, small markets where vendors unfolded cloths with figs, cheese, loaves fragrant as prayer. Even small gestures here felt ceremonial, handing coin, breaking bread, raising cup, each motion infused with reverence for simple life. Pilgrims visited old pilgrim hospitals built long ago to heal body and spirit of those arrived weary. In walls, echoes lingered, moans once soothed by monks, cries turned prayer, sighs turned into rest. Now halls stood still, beautiful in quiet retirement. Some touched stones gently, acknowledging gratitude to those unseen healers who labored through centuries for sake of strangers they never knew. Gratitude expanded beyond walls, beyond city, toward every hand across lands that offered shelter, bread, blessing. Those who stayed for Mass felt choir wash over them once again, voices rising like gentle tide. They did not stand tall, they bowed heads, as if hoping humility might settle permanently into heart. Priest lifted chalice, sunlight glinting through wine, and pilgrims felt weight of road lift at last, not discarded, but transformed into strength. Bread placed on tongue tasted like world returned simple and sacred. Cup touched lips like promise renewed. After service, they stepped out once more into plaza, where warmth grew. Travelers removed cloaks now heavy with dust but precious still, trophies not of conquest, but of endurance and grace. Some folded them with care, placing into packs beside shell that now shone like relic. Others draped them around shoulders, reluctant to shed garment that felt like second skin shaped by wind and sun and pilgrimage breath. By midday, city hummed softly, vendors calling, children laughing, horses clopping cobbles. Pilgrims blended with life of Santiago, not as outsiders, but as souls who belonged, if only briefly, to this place of endings and beginnings. Some stood in shadow and stared long at cathedral facade, unwilling to turn from sight. Others sat upon steps and polished staff with sleeve, gesture slow, as if honoring companion before parting. Throughout plazas and cloisters, one could sense quiet blessing passing from pilgrim to pilgrim, sometimes in touch of shoulder, sometimes in shared loaf, sometimes in gaze that acknowledged sacred mystery of road. No one spoke loudly. Voices stayed soft, as though still speaking with mountains, rivers, stars. Even laughter here felt gentle, as if remembering sorrow carried before were part of beauty too. When evening settled, turning sky amber then violet, many gathered again in front of cathedral. Bells tolled and pigeons lifted, swirling briefly like grey ribbon above rooftops before settling once more. Lanterns were lit, casting warm halos across stone. Pilgrims sat in circle on cobblestones, boots in dust, shells resting against heart, staff across lap. Some shared wine, passing cup with reverence. Some sang quiet hymn, barely above whisper, voices trembling but sure, melody old as faith and soft as dusk. They did not speak of leaving tomorrow. They did not speak of returning to farms, to villages, to families waiting far beyond horizon. They stayed present in sacred now, in breath, in silence, in glow of lantern and hush of night settling. Wind brushed cloaks, cool and gentle. Incense still clung faintly to air, memory of ritual lingering like scent of rose long after bloom fades. At last, when darkness deepened and stars emerged like ancient pilgrims in heaven's expanse, each rose slowly, bowing head once toward cathedral, then toward companions. Some touched ground in farewell, fingers grazing cool stone. Others kissed shell lightly, reverent and grateful. And slowly, as if following rhythm of divine heartbeat, they departed to rest, But all knew, though road had ended beneath feet, it had just begun within bones. They would return to fields, to trade, to family hearth, to town square. Yet their steps would never sound the same again. Hearts would never beat as before. The Camino had carved into them tenderness like river carving stone, not sudden, but deep, permanent, silent. For in the end, the holy road did not lead to Santiago. It led to themselves. And while cathedrals stood mighty in moonlight, shadow touching spires, pilgrims lay in darkness, eyes closed, breathing steady. In dream, they walked still, but no longer toward shrine. Now they walked toward future, carrying within them quiet knowing that every journey worth taking begins with humility, continues with surrender, and ends not at destination, but in transformation. Long after medieval bells first sang across quiet valleys, long after kings and beggars, monks and warriors, peasants and scholars pressed their dusty feet into the pilgrim soil, the Camino lay waiting, not forgotten, but sleeping. History, like tide, ebbed and flowed. Empires rose and crumbled, forests stretched and thinned, castles weathered into stone memories perched upon lonely hilltops. Roads once crowded with devotion grew silent, worn only by shepherd and wind. The pilgrim way rested under moss and quiet grass, as though earth held its breath, safeguarding sacred paths until hearts once again hungered for journey. There came centuries when pilgrimage became a whisper. War shook kingdoms, famine thinned villages, plagues darkened hearths and hollowed streets. Faith did not vanish, but it retreated inward, to quiet chapels, to whispered prayers inside shuttered homes, to hearts survival toughened and cautious. The world seemed to close its eyes. Roads waited, patient as stone saints watching over abandoned cloisters, yet the Camino never died. It lived in lullaby and prayer, in tale told by firelight, in scallop shell kept in grandmother's small chest among faded cloth and pressed lavender. It lived in carved symbols on church doors, in crossroads shrines moss-cloaked but unbroken, in bell towers that still watched horizon even when no pilgrim arrived to bow beneath shadow. The roads slept like embers under ash, quiet, hidden, but alive with memory. As centuries turned and worlds shifted, from horse to carriage, from sail to steam, from parchment to printed page, hearts, too, changed. Humanity grew restless in new ways, burdened not by hunger alone, but by noise, speed, and forgetting. People crossed oceans in steel hulls and skies in silver wings, yet many felt further from themselves, as though distance could be conquered by machine, but never by soul. In cities that glowed electric and restless through night, dreams longed once more for silence, for simplicity, for meaning walked slowly into bone. And so, almost without trumpet or herald, the Camino stirred. Scholars studied faded manuscripts, villagers cleared overgrown paths, monks opened ancient hospice doors again, lanterns lit in windows as if they had never dimmed. Stones were lifted from forgotten shrines, moss brushed from saintly faces, bridges mended, signposts carved anew. The road breathed, stretching like pilgrim waking after generations of slumber. Modern pilgrims came first hesitantly, a few scholars, a few wanderers drawn by curiosity or whisper of ancient longing. Their feet pressed earth cautiously, as if asking permission to return. But the Camino, generous as old friend, welcomed them without judgment. Their pace was slow, their hearts unsteady, yet something in rhythm of step and breath and horizon answered questions they did not know how to speak. Word spread, not loudly, not fiercely, but softly, like rumor of spring after endless winter. Soon thousands walked, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. They came not only from villages nearby, but from continents oceans apart, voices blending languages like rivers merging in wide valley. They came with boots modern, packs shaped by new craft, but hearts hungry with ancient hunger. Some sought God as pilgrims once did. Others sought peace, clarity, healing, or simply a place where world moved at pace of wind across grain. Some came wounded by grief, others by weariness of striving in world too swift. Some came out of curiosity, others to fulfill vow whispered beside hospital bed or in moment of life's upheaval. But all came like their ancestors, hopeful that road might soften sorrow, open vision, carry them into deeper truth. Along route, life awoke. Villages once fading with time found laughter again. Ovens fired to bake bread for pilgrims, inns filled, bells rang, doors opened with warmth. Old men sat on stone benches watching walkers pass, nodding blessing with eyes bright as dawn. Children offered water and wildflowers. Farmers waved from fields, remembering ancestors who once walked with staff and shell. Hospitals became hostels. Monasteries welcomed stranger once more. Trails marked by yellow arrows guided way through forests, plains, mountains. In chapels where candles had long gone dark, flame returned, flickering steady in alcoves, lighting carved wooden saints with new reverence. The language of devotion expanded, now spoken not only by kneeling pilgrims but by cyclists, by quiet thinkers, by restless souls seeking breath away from screens and noise. And yet, beneath all change, essence stayed. Humility, patience, surrender, wonder. Many walked alone, yet never alone. Solitude on Camino was not loneliness. It was companionship with earth, sky, self. Conversations sparked at roadside fountains, at long tables in hostels where bowls of stew and baskets of bread passed hand to hand. People shared stories, not always heavy, not always profound. Sometimes simple tales of childhood fields and hometown rivers, sometimes confessions of heartbreak or hope. And strangers became companions, if only for a mile, sometimes for lifetime. The old rituals lived too. Shells hung from modern packs. Walking staffs tapped asphalt and dirt with ancient rhythm. Pilgrims still paused at bridge midspan to watch river shimmer. They still collected passport stamps, still lit candles in chapels where stone walls breathed centuries. They still wept unexpectedly at sight of cathedral towers rising through mist. They still whispered names of those loved and lost, still felt presence in silence, still found grace in humble meals shared on hillside beneath fading sun. But perhaps most remarkable was not return of tradition, but deepening of it. For pilgrimage grew to hold more than one faith, more than one understanding. Buddhists walked, whispering mantras into dawn air. Secular wanderers walked, revering earth as temple. Those unsure what they believed walked simply because something in road called. Camino did not demand creed. It welcomed heart. It taught without lecture, healed without promise, embraced without expectation. It gave space to grieve, to forgive, to breathe, to wonder, to begin again. And when modern pilgrims reached Santiago and stood beneath cathedral towers radiant at dusk, they found same stillness, same breath-catching awe, same tears waiting like holy water just behind eyes. Bells tolled, echoing centuries. Incense rose from silver vessel, just as it had for those who walked before armored knights or beneath monasteries newly built. And pilgrims knelt, some in faith, some in gratitude, some in silence so deep it became prayer without words. Then they walked beyond city, to ocean where world once believed ended. They stood on cliffs watching waves crash eternal hymn against stone. Some burned small scrap of clothing, a symbol of shedding old self, smoke rising into wind like soul opening. Others held scallop shell to ear, listening not for sea but for memory of footsteps, wind, psalm, and quiet. They returned home changed, not always visibly, but unmistakably in way they spoke softer, listened deeper, walked slower, loved wider. The Camino lives now not only in Spain, not only in stone and road and relic, but in stories, in breath, in quiet corners of modern hearts seeking ancient peace. It stretches across continents, inspiring new paths in other lands, though none carry weight of Santiago's centuries. Yet all hold echo, truth that walking, when done with humility and openness, becomes meditation, prayer, healing. Legacy of Camino is not simply tradition revived. It is human spirit remembering its ancient longing for journey toward meaning. It is bridge between centuries, between hearts, between earth and heaven, between who we were and who we may yet become. For long after cathedrals crumble and roads shift, pilgrim spirit remains vast, tender, enduring. And somewhere, always, a pilgrim will lift pack, tie shell, take first step westward, and whisper as ancestors once did, "I go not to escape life, but to walk more deeply into it." In the new age, when lights glow in glass towers and voices travel through wires swifter than wind across wheat fields, the Camino remains unchanged in its essence, a thread of earth and sky braided through time. Yet the shape of pilgrimage has softened, widened. No longer only penitents wrapped in wool and prayer, but seekers wrapped in silence and hope walk its length. They come not only from kingdoms beyond mountains, but from cities where dawn breaks over steel and river walks, from islands where palms sway and ocean breathes warm, from valleys where snow piles deep as memory. Their accents mingle like birdsong in spring. Their stories carry continents. Some begin with trembling uncertainty. They arrive at first marker, yellow fleck of paint on roadside stone, like child at threshold of school, unsure whether to step forward. They lace boots with fingers that shake slightly, adjust straps on pack, exhale breath heavy with world they left behind. Then staff rises, foot lifts, and path takes first claim of them, gentle, steady, inevitable. They do not yet know they will be remade, that each mile will carve softness into places hardened by noise and hurry, that each dawn will polish their eyes until they see world anew. But road knows and waits patiently. At times, groups walk together, students curious, elders reflective, families stitched together by laughter and shared bread. They sing quietly or hum or simply breathe beside one another, trusting path to guide their conversations like river guiding boat. At times, solitary figures move like shadows across morning meadows, alone not from loneliness, but from reverence. In solitude, heart grows clear, like lake when wind ceases and sky reflects within perfectly. Technology travels with them, a phone tucked in pack, a map glowing faint, a camera capturing sunlight on tiled roof. Yet often, screens stay silent, battery dwindles forgotten. Pilgrims learn distance again not by digital measure but by wind on cheek, ache in heel, bell in distant tower. They learn direction not by compass of glass, but by arrow, painted bright yellow, pointing trustfully through field and forest. They discover that connection is not in signal bars, but in shared shadow beneath fig tree, in quiet Buin Camino, exchanged with stranger whose smile feels familiar as home. The modern Camino brings comfort not known to medieval weary souls. Soft beds in hostels, warm showers, cafes offering simple meals steaming fragrant at dawn. Yet no convenience erases truth of road. That walking remains act of surrender, that feet still bruise, that thirst still humbles, that hunger still sharpens gratitude. Modern pilgrim may carry lighter burden in pack, but carries same ancient weight in heart, weight of longing to belong to something greater than pace of clocks and hum of machines. And when dusk arrives, pilgrim still sits in courtyard or beneath chestnut tree in village square, watching sky turn rose then violet. Other travelers gather, bowls of warm stew in hand, bread shared across tables. Laughter echoes, soft and reverent, like wind bells hung in cloister. Stories drift in gentle conversation, tales not of conquest, but of quiet revelation. A kindness offered by stranger, a sunrise that felt like grace, a river crossing where water washed sorrow from tired heart, a prayer whispered to fields that answered not in voice but in peace. Some evenings, guitars strum low melody beneath lantern light. Feet ache, but hearts hum. Pilgrims speak of families far away, of work waiting at home, of children who will one day walk or who once walked before them. They speak of why they came, not always clear at beginning, now luminous like star appearing just after sunset. And when silence falls, it falls tender, not awkward. For on Camino, silence is companion, not absence. In morning, they wake earlier than before, not because alarm demands, but because dawn calls. They see first light as blessing, not interruption. They lace boots slowly, reverently. They tie shell with deliberate motion, as though fastening sacred memory to breast. They lift pack, but pack feels lighter, not from weight lost, but from burden released. And as they walk, their steps feel prayerful, each one small miracle of movement and will. Along path, ancient markers stand, Celtic crosses mossed with time, milestones carved by forgotten kings, hermit shrines perched like doves on cliff rock. Pilgrims pause, tracing ancient grooves with fingers, marveling at hands that carved these symbols before kingdoms fell, before languages changed, before road quieted and then revived. It is here they feel thread that binds centuries, that they walk not merely behind those who preceded them, but beside them, carried in same faith, same longing, same dust. And when storms come, pilgrims lift hoods, brace against wind, and continue. Rain washes road clean, tears mingled with rain cleanse heart. Mud clings heavy to souls, yet they do not curse earth, they bless it for humbling them gently. In wind's howl they do not feel forsaken, they feel tested as if sky itself whispers. Endure, and you will find strength deeper than muscles and bone. And when sun returns, warming wet stone and chilled breath, they feel gratitude rise like incense from chest. Some meet healers a long way, not monks this time, but fellow pilgrims who notice limp, offer salve, teach how to bind blister. Others offer nothing but presence alone can heal more than medicine. A nod, a shared silence, a hand on shoulder. These are sacraments in modern road, chalice and candle replaced by warmth of human soul meeting human soul. And still, as in ancient times, when final day approaches and Santiago draws near, pilgrims feel heart tighten with both joy and sorrow. For arrival is not only end, but farewell. Farewell to rhythm learned in miles, to sky that felt like roof of sanctuary, to simplicity where each day held single sacred task, to walk, to breathe, to be. Yet they do not turn back. They climb hill, see towers rise golden from mist, and breath catches just as it did for those who walked centuries before. Entering cathedral now, they find electric lights alongside candle flame, yet flame still holds primacy, dancing in quiet dignity. They hear languages from every corner of world whisper prayer and realize that faith wears many robes, yet kneels on same stone. The Botafumeiro swings still, silver gleaming, arc wide as swell of sea. Smoke rises in great sweeping breath, and pilgrims feel it fill them, not lungs alone, but spirit. Then, as in old times, they step outside, blink in sunlight, sit upon warm stone. Some remove boots, free feet that carried continents. They touch shell, not as trophy, but as talisman of life lived awake. They feel earth hum below, city breathe around, heaven open above. And in that moment, quiet, holy, they understand pilgrimage not as escape, but as return. Return to rhythm older than cities. Return to humility older than pride. Return to self, simple and sacred. When they go home, road remains beneath skin. Busy streets do not erase memory of soft earth underfoot. Noise does not drown wind that once sang through pines. Crowded trains do not shake peace learned in forest silence. They walk slower now, listen more, bless quietly those they meet. They rise early sometimes, not from duty, but from longing for dawn sky. And when sorrow visits, they close eyes and feel staff in palm, path beneath foot, shell at heart, remembering they once walked across world and found grace waiting at each step. In gentle moments when world quiets, they whisper to themselves, I can walk again, I can breathe again. The road lives in me. And thus, Camino's revival is not merely in stones retread, nor yellow arrows painted fresh, nor hostels opened with warm bread and kind eyes. Its revival endures in souls touched and remade. Hundreds of thousands walk each year, yet road remains spacious, because spirit of Camino expands as hearts open. It holds each pilgrim's story without losing others. It does not thin with use. It grows richer, deeper, fuller, like tapestry woven thread by humble thread. Long after boots are stored, shells hung on wall, staff leaning in corner collecting dust, pilgrimage continues. For true Camino does not end at cathedral nor at sea. True Camino begins when traveler returns home, carrying peace into world hungry for it, carrying gentleness into places hardened by haste, carrying silence into rooms loud with fear and pride. And whenever they feel lost again, whenever life grows sharp and hurried, they need only remember dirt path glowing in morning gold, remember strangers' blessing whispered at well, remember their own breath steady beneath endless sky. Then, without leaving home, they will feel Camino rise beneath them once more, quiet road of spirit, unending, forgiving, patient as dawn. For pilgrimage is not journey of miles, but journey of heart learning how to walk again. Even the longest journey breathes to a stillness, not as a door closing, but as a candle dimming after guiding through night. The Camino does not truly end. It settles into memory the way twilight settles across a quiet valley, not abrupt, but tender, laying soft shadow on field and roof, touching leaves one last time with glowing fingertip before yielding world to silence. You have walked far, across plains where wind bent wheat in golden prayer, through forests where sunlight pooled sacred and green, over mountains where breath grew thin and sky leaned close like an old friend. You have crossed stone bridges arched like blessings over rivers ancient and murmuring. You have rested in cloisters where monks whispered night into peace, where candles breathed steady devotion into passing hours. You have knelt beneath vaults high as dream, where stained glass cast dawn-colored mercy across tired shoulders. You have waited in quiet plazas, feeling centuries breathe around you. You have stepped barefoot on cool cathedral stone, and you have wept without shame, because here tears are water for soul's soil, and every soul deserves to bloom. And now, the path grows still. But listen, there is no loneliness in this stillness, no emptiness, only fullness hushed, like summer orchard after harvest, fruit given and earth resting, satisfied by what has been offered. For pilgrimage does not vanish when boots are unlaced or staff leaned gently against wall. It lingers, woven into marrow, into breath, into gentle slowness of hand now more willing to rest, into eyes now trained to notice tenderness in smallest corner of world. You have learned things on the road that cannot be spoken fully, even to those waiting at home with curious hearts. They will ask what you saw, but sights were many and secondary. They will ask whom you met, and you will answer, but no truth lies deeper than names. They will ask what you found, and you will pause, for how to describe discovery not of treasure but of self, not sudden but unfolding, petal by petal beneath patient sun. Pilgrimage teaches without syllable. It whispers through blisters that heal, through hunger humbled by shared crust, through sorrow laid gently in chapel shadow and lifted lighter from floor. It teaches in rhythm of footsteps like beads sliding along rosary, in silence that does not frighten, in horizon that moves only when you move toward it. You learned that you are small beneath sky and also held by it, fragile in flesh, enduring in spirit, capable of exhaustion so deep its silence is thought, and capable of rising again with dawn, steady as tide returning to shore. You learn that strangers become kin when road softens ego and opens heart, that a greeting whispered along dusty track can bless more deeply than sermons carved in iron tongue. That kindness offered without reason is lantern held in dark, guiding as surely as star. That humility is not lowering but grounding, like root that sinks deep so tree may rise strong. And that peace is not prize at end, but companion found mile by mile, heartbeat by heartbeat, under cloud or sun or rain whispering on hood. You discovered the sacred in ordinary, chipped bowl of vegetable stew after long day, warm straw beneath tired back, sound of distant bell in evening, dogs sleeping beside doorstep, leaf trembling in wind as if reciting ancient scripture. You found cathedral not only in Santiago, but in every grove where branches arched like ribs of holy hall, in every village church where plaster saints smiled gentle beneath candle soot, in every sunrise lifting blue from night like curtain revealing quiet grace. And now, standing at threshold of return, you feel dual pull, one toward home, one back to road. This is as it should be. For no true pilgrimage sends traveler home unchanged, no heart returns fully to shape it had before leaving. You will walk familiar streets with unfamiliar stillness. You will hear ordinary sounds as if through clearer ear. You will carry simplicity like lantern into rooms cluttered with haste. You will hold memory of morning light on pilgrim path like prayer inside ribcage. Perhaps one evening, when world grows busy and noise presses, you will hold your shell again, smooth edges fitting palm like truth fitting soul. You will run thumb along grooves and remember that many roads lead to same center, many ridges meet same point. That your journey was not only to shrine in distant land, but to quiet room within yourself where peace waits always, even when forgotten. Some nights, you will dream of walking, boots tapping soft earth, breeze lifting cloak, horizon stretching patient, generous. And in morning, you will smile quietly, knowing road lives still beneath floorboards and grass and stone, waiting for next step whenever heart grows ready to listen again. For Camino is not line on map, it is pulse in world and whisper in heart. It is ancient and newborn each time foot touches soil in reverence. It teaches not that life is journey, but that life is pilgrimage, sacred, stumbling, luminous, humble, infinite. Every conversation becomes waystation. Every kindness becomes bread. Every sorrow becomes hill to climb. Every joy becomes sunlit meadow. And every breath becomes step toward something holy, tender and waiting. Now you rest, not in end, but in gentle turning. Dawn will come again, but tonight belongs to peace. Lay down your staff. Remove dust from cloak. Sit in quiet room lit by candle or memory of candle. Let stillness fold around you like cloak of deep monastery night. Feel heartbeat slow. Feel roads settle into bones like blessing leaning close to whisper. Well done. And when you rise tomorrow, whether to field or desk or mountain or kitchen, rise as pilgrim still. Move with slowness earned by journey. Speak with softness shaped by prayer. Love with wide open heart that knows all are travelers, all are tired sometimes, all hunger for grace. For Camino has not ended, it has entered you, and wherever you walk now, the sacred road walks with you, gentle as dawn breath, faithful as horizon. Go softly, pilgrim. Your journey continues in every quiet step you take.